お前はどこまで見えている。俺の死に様か。
The weather outside was dry and hot, in principle characteristic of this time of year of the land of fire. All the villagers were languishing from the heat, crawling through the streets rather than walking. The sun had been scorching mercilessly for what a week, and one could only dream of rain. Team number 7 has been on the road for almost a whole day. If even in the morning Naruto had a fighting spirit, and he was ready to rush into battle at any moment, now the blonde was barely moving his legs. The descendant of the Uchiha clan tried not to show his weakness, so he just walked in silence, with his head held high. Sakura was not much different from Uzumaki. She constantly sighed heavily and regretted that she was not born a boy and could not walk in her shorts. But Kakashi, apparently, was not interested in the condition of his students, as the copying ninja Konoha calmly walked along the road, absorbed in the next novel Ika Ika. Naruto tried his best not to pour out a stream of flattering words on Sensei, but in the end, even his patience comes to an end. Kakashi-sensei, when are we going to have a rest? The heat is out there, what it's worth. The guy whined plaintively, looking hopefully at Hatake. Naruto, shut up, we have very little left. We will pick up the scroll, and then we will make a rest with a calm soul. It seems that Haruno doubted her words, since there was still about 3 hours of travel to the destination. Well, Sakura-chan, it's not fair, our sensei doesn't care about us, and I'm going to die from overheating. Uzumaki made the most deplorable expression on his face. So, take off your jacket, you idiot. The pink-haired woman snorted, pointing at the blonde man's attire. That's why I got fried, because I dressed like in a 30-degree frost. Uzumaki's cheeks turned pink, and he hastened to turn away from the piercing gaze of his partner. Why are you trying to undress me? Quietly and with some caution, the guy stammered, for which the next second he received a savory slap on the back of the head. Don't talk nonsense. Sakura squealed and hissed some obscenity under her breath. Vaughn, can't you walk calmly like Sasuke-kun? Her tone softened, and she looked adoringly in the direction of the brunette. Why are you starting about him again? Naruto was indignant, and you know what, guys, let's speed up? The argument was interrupted by Hatake, who had managed to hide the book in his vest pocket and was now examining the students expectantly. Naruto clenched his jaw and frowned, but did not dare to be indignant. Therefore, the shinobi easily jumped onto the wide branches of trees and headed to their destination. The colors of the sky were slowly thickening. The sun had already disappeared below the horizon, the heat had subsided, so you could breathe easy. The 7th team successfully coped with the task, took the scroll important for the village from the right person and made a rest with a calm soul. Kakashi was sitting on one of the branches of the trees, in order to notice the enemy shinobi if they wanted to visit them. Sakura, who was so exhausted during the day that she couldn't feel her legs, was peacefully looking at the bonfire after half an hour, developing a maniacal idea of how to interest Sasuke, who was sitting next to her and thinking about something of his own. Naruto saluted everyone and hurried to splash a little in the cool river. Sasuke-kun, or maybe, the pink-haired woman did not have time to finish, as she was rudely interrupted. It can't, Sakura, I think I'll take a walk, Uchiha drawled wearily and hurried to leave the annoying interlocutor. The brunette was approaching the river with a slow step. He suddenly thought that it would not hurt for him to cool off too. Sasuke carefully straightened the green branches of the dense trees and froze. Uchiha opened his eyes wide in surprise and held his breath, hoping that he would remain unnoticed. Naruto was standing on the very bank of the river, his feet were ankle-deep in water. Uzumaki began to untie the bandana, which for some reason he began to wear at least 3 years ago. The blonde pulled on the edge of the fabric and golden locks of hair scattered down his back. Sasuke blinked a couple of times, thinking that he was just imagining things, but as it turned out, everything was real. Naruto unbuttoned his orange jacket and threw it on the sand. Then he pulled off his pants and t-shirt. But as it turned out, under the black t-shirt there were bandages that tightened his chest. What kind of madhouse is going on here? Sasuke was mentally indignant, without taking his eyes off his friend. Naruto picked up the edge of the bandages and quickly untied them. Uchiha turned purple with embarrassment and wanted to look away, but for some reason could not do it. Naruto only turned to the shore for a second to throw bandages into a pile of other clothes, but Sasuke clearly saw his body. Or would it be more correct to say her body? Under his clothes, he would never be able to see the guy's figure, and he was not up to it. What difference does it make what's under this idiot's clothes? But behind the baggy things were hiding very pretty shapes. Naruto's body was elegant, tanned, a wasp waist, thin legs, taut buttocks and a neat chest of the first, and maybe even the second size. Uchiha did not understand this. Of course, Sasuke didn't doubt his mental abilities. But suddenly the thought came to him that the enemies who were hiding somewhere had sent him to Genjutsu. Sasuke focused on his inner concentration, but he didn't find any changes in the chakra flows. So I didn't dream it, that's it. The brunette stated and looked at Naruto again. Now it was somehow unusual for him to call him a guy. The tongue didn't even turn. Uchiha just as quietly released the branches of the trees and headed back to the camp. There were a lot of crazy thoughts in his head, which were clearly in no hurry to leave him, and it did not fit in that Uzumaki turned out to be a girl. After all, for 15 years he was known as an ordinary guy and for some reason avoided him for the first time. But this boy was able to gain recognition. Now he was one of the strongest ninjas of the village, even though he seemed like a jerk. Sasuke returned to the clearing and found that Kakashi had disappeared without a trace, apparently having gone on patrol of territories. Sakura peacefully dozed off by the fire, sweetly snoring in her sleep. Uchiha leaned on a wide tree trunk on the other side of the fire and frowned. He couldn't just ask Naruto, "Hey, dude, why didn't you tell me that the girl really is?" Therefore, the guy decided not to do anything. Uchiha was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't even notice Naruto coming to her. "Sasuke, didn't they teach you that it's indecent to peek?" A soft female voice sounded in his ear this time. The guy shuddered and recoiled from the blonde. Sasuke blinked and made sure that Naruto was standing in front of him, in his usual orange suit and with a stupid bandana on his head. But, damn it, he had a female voice, therefore, everything that happened was 100% real. It's indecent to spy on girls, but here's the oddity, I wasn't warned that my partner really was. Sasuke didn't have time to finish, as they brazenly covered his mouth with his palm. Then he felt like a real idiot. How could he, a descendant of a great clan and an excellent shinobi, not notice that his hands were too feminine for a guy? Thin fingers, neat nails, and surprisingly delicate skin. "What are you doing, idiot?" Naruto hissed. "No one should know about this." Now his voice was low again and with its characteristic hoarseness. Sasuke threw back Uzumaki's hand and fiercely looked into his partner's eyes. "Unlike you, I'm not going to ring about it at every corner," Uchiha informed the interlocutor in an icy tone. "But maybe you will tell me everything in order after all?" Sasuke raised his eyebrows. "This is so secret information that if someone finds out about your awareness about this, then it will be very bad for you." The girl grinned and tucked the fallen blonde strand behind the bandana. "So you were just pretending to be an idiot?" "You mean pretending to be an idiot?" "In general, you understand." The guy waved away. "Listen, Uchiha, this is not a joke." Naruto sat down next to the still slightly stunned brunette and sighed heavily. "I'll tell you everything down to the smallest details, but a little later. I'm tired and terribly sleepy." The blonde rubbed her eyes and sighed heavily. "Now it sounds even too strange," Sasuke snorted. "I'm still the same as before. It's just that now you've found out my little secret." Uzumaki grinned and tilted her head, mockingly watching the brunette's reaction. "I just realized now that I have 2 girls on my team. One girl is head over heels in love with me, and the second one pretends to be a guy at all. It's fun, what to say?" Uchiha somehow grinned sadly. which caused Naruto's muffled laughter. The dull trill of the doorbell went through the apartment. Naruto just rolled over and continued to sniff into the pillow. But someone standing behind the door was so stubborn that he forced the bell for several minutes in a row. In the end, Uzumaki growled something not quite flattering and slid off the bed. She looked through the peephole and wanted to go get dressed, but when she saw the uninvited guest, she moaned softly and opened the door. Sasuke, shifting from one foot to the other and calmly waiting for the blonde, was a little stunned when the door in front of his nose abruptly opened and he was dragged into the apartment by the collar. Not expecting such a turn of events, the brunette looked up at Uzumaki and swallowed. The girl stood sleepy and unhappy. Golden curls were gathered in a careless ponytail, and the girl was wearing only underwear. "What do you need early in the morning?" she muttered sullenly and trudged into the kitchen, slapping her bare feet on the floor. Sasuke was mentally amazed at her insouciance. Yes, she doesn't seem to care that she is a girl and appeared in front of a guy in only underwear. What if he wanted to rape her? Uchiha couldn't help but chuckle at the thought that visited his head. The last thing to be afraid of is Uzumaki's rape. The brunette has already imagined in the most colorful way what will happen to a maniac who will try to encroach on the innocence of a blonde. "Why are you staring at me like that?" Naruto asked warily, closing the pack of cereal and trying to put it on the farthest shelf of the kitchen cabinet. But the blonde lacked only a few centimeters to reach the cherished piece of wood. Uchiha rolled his eyes, and then grabbed a pack of cereal and easily put them on the very shelf that was out of reach of Naruto. "Damn, I didn't notice that you were taller than me," the girl drawled thoughtfully, and then shrugged her shoulders, and as if nothing had happened, sat down on a chair and began to eat cornflakes. "If it doesn't bother you, then talk about yourself in a woman's face when we are alone." "I have a feeling that I'm talking to a transvestite," Sasuke snorted and sat down opposite the girl. "As you say," Naruto barely uttered this phrase, as her mouth was full, and she looked like a real hamster. "So why did you come to my humble abode?" Sasuke shuddered at the speech patterns Uzumaki used. He still couldn't get used to the fact that his eternal rival is actually a girl, and even more so not as stupid as it seems at first glance. "We're supposed to be at the Hokage's by 10. And I decided to hear the story of your real life while there is time," the Sharingan bearer replied indifferently. "And what will I get for it?" The blonde smiled slyly, tilting her head to the side, a whole and unharmed face. "I have not yet moved away from what happened, so I can punch you properly, and then blame it all on the shock," Sasuke said in a sepulchral tone, which made his interlocutor shudder. "Well, okay, Baka." Naruto rolled her eyes. Flashback, 15 years ago, "What are we going to do with Jinchuriki?" Danzo's voice sounded like thunder in the middle of a clear sky. Almost all the elders stared at him, waiting for suggestions, because they knew that this person would not say anything just like that. The third Hokage looked at the man with apprehension, but chose to remain silent, as he wanted to find out what thoughts were visiting Danzo's head. "I think he should be isolated from society. As a last resort, we will be able to use his power for the benefit of the village at any time." The elder continued to speak. "Definitely this is not the way out." Sarutobi shook his head. "Are there any other suggestions? The boy can't be left just like that. If other countries find out about our deplorable situation, then we will not be able to repel the blow, and they will receive the most powerful weapon, a nine-tailed fox." A muffled voice was heard. "And this is exactly what we need." The third rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Absolutely everyone is sure that Jinchuriki is a boy. But so far no one is aware that Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina have a daughter. But how is this possible? All examinations indicated that the fourth would have a son. As you can see, the examinations did not give anything. A girl was born. But if everyone is convinced that a boy was born, then later they will look for male Jinchuriki." Hiruzen smiled easily. "And no one will even think of looking for Jinchuriki among the kunoichi. In case of danger, we can easily take advantage of this situation." The third shrugged. "That's quite an interesting idea. The hardest thing to find is what is in plain sight. A girl who will play the role of a boy, one of the elders, could be heard laughing softly. Madness. Danzo flashed his eyes in the direction of the daredevils. How do you imagine this circus? And I agree with the third. I think it's a great idea. Well, you're not like people, Uchiha chuckled, to which Uzumaki gave him a tired look. At least in this, you remain the same. I'm wondering, how long are you going to pretend to be a guy? As long as the elders and the fifth require it from me, the blonde calmly replied, looking at something enthusiastically in the window. Sasuke raised his eyebrows in surprise and looked more closely at the girl's face, trying to notice some trick, but there was none. Uzumaki shifted her gaze to the brunette, and he noticed hopeless despair in the blue of those eyes. If he had not found out this secret, it is unlikely that he would ever have thought about how this idiot lives, and for some time this idiot, although he already doubted her idiocy, actually. The elders decided everything for Naruto, and who knows if she wanted it. First, the fourth sealed a demon with destructive power in her, and then she was even more turned into a guy. Most likely, she, like the most normal girl, wants to run shopping with her friends, fall in love with guys, and have fun chirping about how beautiful this world is. Don't look at me like that. Only after uttering this phrase, Sasuke noticed that he had been stared at for about a minute. I hate that look as much as you do. Don't feel sorry for me. By the way, Naruto, Uchiha suddenly dawned, but he did not have time to finish, as the blonde interrupted him. Naruko, what? Sasuke's look clearly showed incomprehension. When it's just the two of us, call me Naruko. It's more familiar to me, the person shrugged her shoulders. So what did you want to ask? The brunette froze for a second, wondering whether it was worth asking the question that tormented him. It was somewhat awkward for him to ask a girl like that, and especially a girl like Uzumaki. She could easily punch him and not even blink an eye. Naruko, are you a lesbian? Uchiha blurted out and held his breath, waiting for an answer from the blonde. The girl, it seems, did not immediately understand the essence of the question, and then raised her eyes to Sasuke. From her look, the brunette immediately felt uncomfortable, as it seemed that Uzumaki would turn him into a handful of ashes. Are you fucking crazy? Idiot, I'm going to pull your Sharingan on your ass right now. She snarled. How could you think that, and how do you explain the fact that you have been running after Sakura for several years? Sasuke grinned. Naruko got up from the table and pulled the Uchiha by the collar so close that their faces were on the same level. The brunette even had the thought that it was not for nothing that she took after her mother in character. There were a lot of rumors about the bloody habanero as a talented kunoichi. So talented that all enemies within a radius of 100 meters ran away from one of her looks so that their heels sparkled. I'm not running after Sakura, but the same kid whose role I skillfully play. Uzumaki squeezed his collar so hard that it seemed like the fabric would crack under such pressure. And if I hear such a question from you again, I swear you'll regret asking it. The blonde abruptly unclenched her fingers and, as if nothing had happened, got up from the table. Sasuke followed her with a thoughtful look, and when she disappeared behind the door, he looked at his watch and realized that they might be late. Uchiha came into the room and, seeing a rather interesting picture, abruptly turned away and tried to catch his breath. Did the great and terrible Sasuke Uchiha have a conscience awakened, and he decided not to spy on girls anymore? Uzumaki mockingly stretched out, bandaging her chest. I didn't peek then either. It was just an interest, the brunette snorted, clenching his fists, and as luck would have it, the moments of last night and naked Naruko flashed in his head. Oh, come on, don't be so embarrassed. The blonde still couldn't hold back a laugh. Uzumaki, you got me. Sasuke abruptly turned to face the girl and shuddered. Naruko was standing right in front of his nose. Too close, Uchiha thought, and wanted to recoil, but rested his back against a wooden chest of drawers. And Uzumaki was slowly approaching him. Sasuke froze and wanted to push the impudent girl away, but his hands did not obey. All his self-control went to hell, but he tried to keep a straight face. And the blonde just put her hand behind his back, grabbed her jacket and quickly pulled away. "You should have seen your face," Naruko laughed, zipping up and throwing a mischievous look at Uchiha. She gathered her hair and tied a bandana. Now Naruto Uzumaki was standing in front of Sasuke again. It was impossible to understand that a girl was standing in front of him. A simple boy, tanned, short, with big blue eyes. "Well, why did you get up? Let's go already," Naruko pushed the brunette. Her voice was boyish again. There was no trace of the gentle and melodious tone. Sasuke didn't even want to think about how she does it. Too much information has fallen on him in recent days, Sasuke-kun. Sakura's voice was heard. The pink-haired one was already running towards them as fast as she could as soon as they left Uzumaki's apartment. "Sakura-chan!" Naruko also exclaimed and ran towards Sakura. It looked quite comical. If a few days ago Sasuke treated all this quite calmly, now he felt like laughing. Okay, when Naruto was running after Haruno, it's okay, he's a guy, it's typical of him. But when Naruko, who so skillfully played the role of a boy, ran towards Sakura almost with tears of happiness, "Fuck off, Naruto," Sakura snorted, pushing the blonde away from her. Then Sasuke could not restrain himself and grinned maliciously, looking at how Naruko rubs a bruised rib. Uchiha walked past Uzumaki, who in her heart was still hoping to incinerate the ugly brunette with a look. But disappointed in her abilities, the girl sighed in resignation and trudged after the others. "So what did Grandma want from us?" Uzumaki asked. "You have a new mission," the girl drawled thoughtfully. "You are going together, since all the mentors are on assignments, and I have things to do in the hospital. It seems you need to destroy several enemy shinobi." The Nukanins raged. "Why won't the Umbu do it?" Sasuke said in a dissatisfied tone. "Most likely, these Nukanins are not so dangerous that they send Umbu detachments on a mission, and Grandma Tsunade decided to push it on us." Uzumaki rolled her eyes. "How predictable it is." "Listen, Naruko, have you ever fallen in love with guys?" Sasuke raised his eyebrows, putting his hands in his pockets and glancing sideways at the interlocutor. The girl looked up at him with a puzzled look and sighed wearily. Just like Sasuke, a lot has fallen on her lately. After all, no one was supposed to know that she was actually a girl. And it would be fine if someone else found out. But Uchiha. It crossed all boundaries. She had always disliked him on some intuitive level. Yes, it sounded silly. But at a time when all the girls were screaming from just his appearance, Naruko just gnashed her teeth. She genuinely didn't understand what all the girls found in this egocentric, narcissistic turkey. There were a lot of good guys in Konoha, yes, there were with their pens, but still good ones. She knew that firsthand. "No, I didn't fall in love," the girl replied colorlessly, without even looking up at Sasuke. "Then how do you know that everything is fine with your orientation?" Uchiha continued his questioning in the same tone. "If you don't shut up, I'll drown you in the nearest river," Uzumaki said wearily. "I don't have any feelings for girls. They're just dumb chickens." "Well, at least most of them are." "From hate to love is one step," the brunette said tartly. In the next second, Naruko knocked him to the ground and tried to squeeze his throat with her hands, but Sasuke intercepted her hands and rolled over. Now the blonde was underneath him. But the fact that she was a girl didn't mean anything at all, since she was a very skilled shinobi. Uzumaki smiled maliciously, and then drove her knee between Uchiha's legs. The reaction came instantly. Sasuke froze, and then clenched his jaw so that his teeth almost cracked. He took a deep breath and slowly got up from the girl, trying to endure the pain, but his white knuckles and barely visible trembling gave him away. The guy took the first slow step and tried to walk in the same spirit. "Sorry, friend, but I warned you." Naruko slapped the brunette on the shoulder and calmly walked forward. Sasuke continued to stare at Uzumaki's back and slowly followed her. But after a while he felt someone else's chakra. It seems that the blonde didn't even pay attention to it. Uchiha grabbed the girl by the hand and jerked her to a stop. Naruko looked up from looking at the local scenery and turned a look full of discontent on her partner. "Don't you feel anything?" Sasuke asked warily and looked around. In a split second, his eyes changed their color to scarlet. Uzumaki, seeing this, frowned and concentrated. "I don't understand what you're talking about," she muttered in confusion, but suddenly froze when some sounds were heard 100 meters away from them. Both of them turned their gaze to the source of the sound. Uzumaki took out a kunai, and then created several shadow clones. He and Sasuke exchanged glances, and then in a few jumps they were at the river bank. You found us after all," a disappointed exclamation was heard from the crown of the tree, and a second later 2 girls appeared in front of the Konokovites. He looked no more than 18, in ninja clothes and with crossed-out protectors. At first glance, there was nothing dangerous about them. The girls must have been twins, because they didn't differ much. One of them had a slightly different lip shape and a lighter shade of eyes. "I don't like leaving witnesses, Neen," one of the girls drawled and grinned. "Definitely, Nan," her sister answered in the same tone. "Let's finish these kids quickly and we can continue our journey." Sasuke kept his eyes on the enemies, mentally already building the right strategy and preparing to catch their weaknesses. But Uzumaki seemed to have other plans in this regard. And that is, everything is as always spontaneous and in a rush of emotions. "Well, come on, bunnies, start." Naruko grinned and beckoned the girls with her finger, which made them grin. "Are you gay or something?" Ning tilted her head to the side. Sasuke couldn't resist and let out a loud laugh, but then he tried to concentrate. "You can think so." Uzumaki rolled her eyes. "Well, how long are we going to have small talk? Or will you still deign to shake your asses and make an attempt to kill us?" "Nan, you're wearing a dark one, and I'll take this brave man on myself," the girl grinned. "Here we go." The sisters simultaneously began to fold the seals, and even at such a speed that even a good shinobi without using Sharingan found it difficult to understand what kind of technique they were going to use. "Fire dragon," they exclaimed at the same time, and a huge orange dragon appeared out of thin air. Except this dragon wasn't a classic fire technique. Firstly, he was two-headed, and secondly, his shell was purple in color, which made Sasuke very wary. Most likely, it was covered with a layer of chakra, and a fairly powerful chakra. The dragon licked his lips rapaciously, and then rushed towards the Konokovites. Sasuke and Naruko jumped off in different directions at the same time. Sasuke realized that the girls were serious, so he created a Chidori and tried to hurt them with the help of form control. But the dragon growled, and then a huge ball of purple fire burst out of his mouth, with which he fenced the sisters. Uchiha's technique simply dissolved from this strange fire. "What the hell is this?" Uzumaki said sullenly and created a Rasengan with the help of a clone. One of the dragon's heads, noticing the movement from Naruko's side, growled warningly and backed away, trying to protect its mistresses. Due to the careless step of the animal, large cracks spread across several tree trunks, and the creature itself prepared for an attack. But this did not stop the blonde, and she rushed straight at the opponents. While the dragon was distracted, Uchiha once again tried to use the lightning technique. One of the girls grinned maliciously and folded a series of seals unknown to Sasuke. When he used Chidori, a barely visible sphere appeared around his sister. As soon as the lightning blade touched this sphere, the attack was instantly reflected, as if from a mirror. It happened so fast that the brunette did not have time to bounce far enough. A sharp pain pierced his left side and Sasuke winced. "If it wasn't for Sharingan, I would have been dead for a long time," concluded Uchiha and looked in the direction of his partner. Things weren't going too smoothly for Naruko either. The blonde's plan to use Rasengan failed miserably when the dragon almost dined on her. It seems that the scaly creature had very sophisticated ways of killing, and Sasuke could bet that after he used purple fire on them, they would turn into very cute grilled shinobi. "Hey, are you okay?" Naruko landed next to Sasuke and looked anxiously at the side of the brunette. Part of the t-shirt had already turned burgundy, and Uchiha noticed some weakness in the body from blood loss. We need to do something urgently, otherwise it's not far to the grave. Sasuke exhaled and once again looked at the opponents, who, apparently, had already become bored. Then he noticed some inconsistency. The shadows of the girls did not shift a single centimeter in relation to the position of the sun. Consequently, time stopped, and from this only one conclusion followed. Naruko, we're in Genjutsu, Sasuke grinned. What? The girl did not expect such a turn of events and looked around in bewilderment, trying to find a catch. But there was nothing suspicious. The sisters were so skilled in Genjutsu that they missed absolutely nothing. Except for the passage of time. Develop, the Konokovites said at the same time, focusing on the internal flows of the chakra. The terrain did not change in any way, only the shadows were a little longer than in the illusion. Well, you're not as stupid as you seem, one of the sisters, Nan, said mockingly. Just because of Genjutsu, you didn't notice something else. Ning crossed her arms over her chest and began to watch the opponents with interest. You didn't notice me, someone said icily from behind. Sasuke turned around first and already rushed forward to help his partner, but it was too late. Naruko felt a sharp pain and slowly lowered her gaze down. A woman's hand was sticking right out of her stomach. Kunoichi blinked in shock and tried to inhale, but choked on her own blood. The third sister pulled her palm out of the blonde's body and wanted to move away, but was stopped by a wave of the katana. She backed away in fright, and all her former courage instantly evaporated from her gaze. Sasuke made a few more attacks and, as it turned out, the girl was a complete layman in close combat. She didn't have time to dodge one of the Uchiha's attacks, and even didn't think of repelling them with some kind of weapon. The brunette made another swing with his katana, and a long maroon stripe crawled right across the girl's chest. She was confused for only a few seconds, but it was enough to deliver the final blow. The opponent opened her mouth in a silent scream, and then collapsed senseless to the ground. Naruko at this time slowly knelt down and went into a coughing fit. On the bright green grass, she saw her own pool of blood. The pain shot through her whole body, and Uzumaki could not hold back the tears, which, despite the resistance, still drew shiny paths on her pale cheeks. Damn, Uchiha caught himself and jumped up to the girl. The brunette wanted to support Naruko, but she roughly pushed his hands away. I'm fine, the blonde croaked and pressed her palm to her stomach. Of course you're fine, apart from the fact that you're dying at the moment, Sasuke said tartly. Don't panic, Uchiha, the girl grinned, I still have a trump card up my sleeve. Those were Uzumaki's last words before she collapsed on the grass. Well, of course, I see what a trump card you have, the brunette snorted. Leave these psychopaths to me. Sasuke squeezed her wrist and made sure that the girl's pulse was still present, albeit weak. The brunette exhaled with relief and turned to the sisters, who swallowed nervously. Uchiha was specifically surprised that they did not show any reaction at the moment when their sister died. But Sasuke realized that the sooner he dealt with the sisters, the better it would be for Naruko, since she would not last long in this state. Hey, Fox, don't pretend to fall asleep, I know you're not sleeping, Naruko's dissatisfied voice was heard. Behind the thick steel bars, two scarlet eyes lit up, and a wide smile appeared, like a Cheshire cat, more like a grand Uzumaki. Aren't you being impudent? Biju let out a low growl, and then a short laugh was heard from the blonde. Well, Kurama, be a friend, help me, the blonde drawled plaintively, squinting to get a better look at the nine-tailed, and what will I get in return? The fox licked his lips rapaciously and moved closer to the bars. I won't take off the seal, and don't hope, you smart-ass cat, Naruko warned the demon. Well, it was worth a try, Biju grinned. What do you need this time? A pain in the ass, and can't you see, the girl said caustically, pointing to her clothes, where a huge blood stain had spread. The nine-tailed man examined the girl's body more closely, after which he laughed with such force that small waves began to run along the water surface. What, you fucked up Uchiha so much that he tried to gut you? The fox said mockingly. Kurama, you can hurry up, I'm dying, if anything, the girl said through her teeth. Biju chuckled a couple more times, and then ran his clawed paw through the water, causing threads of orange chakra to crawl along it in a thin network. Naruko winced, and then opened her eyes and looked around. They were in some godforsaken clearing. Uchiha had already managed to make a fire and was now sitting, fiddling with some kind of reed in his hands. When Uzumaki propped herself up on her elbows, he turned a reproachful look at her. You could have been more careful, he snorted. If you weren't a Jinchuriki, you would have died long ago. Why are you worried about me? The blonde laughed softly, but it did not pass without a trace for her body, and the girl went into a coughing fit. Sasuke said nothing and turned away towards the fire. Then Naruko worried why there was no caustic remark on his part. You look kind of pale, Uzumaki said sullenly and put her palm to the brunette's forehead. Sasuke, you have a fever. How's your wound? It's all right, he replied indifferently. The blonde rolled her eyes and tried to lift her partner's shirt to examine the wound herself, but she failed to do so. Sasuke slapped her hands with such force that the next second the back of one of the girl's palms turned red. Uzumaki froze and changed her face. Now, instead of anxiety, irritability was clearly visible on his face. A second later, there was the sound of a slap. Sasuke opened his eyes in surprise and stared at the girl. His cheek turned as red as Naruko's palm. If you show off, I'll report to the Hokage that you tried to kill yourself, she said icily. Uchiha realized that it was useless to resist, since Tsunade-sama was very worried about the health of her subordinates. Her excitement was often expressed by screams, reproaches, as well as additional bruises on the shinobi's body. The brunette did not want to test the Hokage's nervous system on himself, so he decided to give Uzumaki the opportunity to patch him up. Don't be afraid, I won't kill you, Naruko muttered, taking medicines out of her backpack. Where did you learn all this? Sasuke asked suspiciously when the girl started washing his wound. At Granny Tsunade's, she shrugged. The girl began to tie the wound tightly with bandages. After a few minutes, she finished and looked at Uchiha with a challenge. Well? I could do without you, the brunette snorted and lowered his shirt. Don't be so mean, Sasuke, and be less annoyed. It's bad for potency, you know. And then there will be no one to restore the Uchi clan, the girl grinned and, leaning on a tree, closed her eyes. It shouldn't concern you. Did I say something about myself? I'm worried about you, my dear. Naruko never opened her eyes. Becoming impotent at the age of 15 is not a very rosy event. So be careful with your nerves. Sasuke's morning, as well as the day itself, in general, were not too rosy for him. It was the 23rd of July, and therefore Uchiha's birthday. From this, his mood disappeared from the very morning. Until the destruction of the Uchi clan, Sasuke adored his name day, like all children of his age. His mother woke him up with a kiss on the cheek, cooked a delicious breakfast, and his brother always gave him some kind of weapon so that the boy would train with him. But then Sasuke's life was divided into before and after. He stopped loving his birthday, and every year his friends gave him some kind of stupidity, which later lay in the pantry of his house. But these birthday parties were different from the previous ones. The brunette hoped that everyone had forgotten what day it was and went quietly to take a shower. His hopes were not fulfilled. As soon as he came out of the bathroom, Naruko attacked him, most likely sneaking into his room through the window. Happy birthday, asshole! She exclaimed and, smiling broadly, squeezed him in a tight embrace. The stunned Uchiha stood motionless. When the blonde pulled away, he noticed something in her hands that looked like a gift-wrapped book. Open it. She thrust a gift into his hands and began to wait with anticipation for the birthday boy's reaction. Sasuke looked at Naruko suspiciously, and then turned his gaze to the gift and began slowly unwrapping the wrapper. He breathed a sigh of relief when he noticed that there was nothing dangerous for his life inside, and such gifts were in the style of Uzumaki. It turned out to be a large photo album already filled with photos. Uchiha opened the first page and began to glance through the photos. Most of them were photos of friends, and Sasuke himself appeared on some of them. When he turned the next page, he barely held the album in his hands. "Why did you insert these photos here?" the brunette said in a hoarse voice, and barely restrained himself so as not to be embarrassed. There was a great Naruto uzumaki seduction technique on this page. Almost naked Naruko happily posed in these photos. And there was one very strange photo. 13-year-old Sasuke and Naruto were apparently on one of the missions, and Uzumaki used her seduction technique. Kakashi with a fountain of blood from his nose, a book Ika in flight, and a terribly dissatisfied Sasuke with pink cheeks. "Don't you like it?" The blonde pouted resentfully. "I think these are pretty cute photos." "Well, of course, how naked you can not be cute." Uchiha rolled his eyes and only after a few seconds realized that he had blurted out. Naruko tried to hide her embarrassment, but Sasuke clearly noticed how her cheeks turned red. "Pervert," she muttered and turned to the window. "Okay, is that all you wanted?" Sasuke said wearily. "No, the others also want to congratulate you, so let's go." She nodded towards the exit. Sasuke, with the air of a great martyr, trudged after Uzumaki, who was in an even too good mood. She was smiling broadly and, with her hands behind her head, was walking through the village. But Uchiha had a strange premonition. No, of course, he was not a naive girl who believed in signs, he was just really restless in his soul. "Sasuke, wake up already." Naruko slapped the guy on the back with such force that he staggered and stopped abruptly. He raised his head and saw a joyful Chuji and Shikamaru in front of him with the usual indifference on his face. The guys, well, at least a Kimichi for sure, couldn't wait to congratulate the birthday boy. Chuji handed Sasuke a large box tied with a blue ribbon and winked. "There will be something to please your stomach," and not only him, the guy drawled mysteriously, and all this time a sly smile did not come off his face. "Yeah, happy birthday, Sasuke." Shikamaru nodded and a deer appeared right in front of Uchiha's nose. A big, horned, fucking deer. The brunette concluded and smiled tightly, which made Uzumaki shudder. "Thanks, guys," he managed to say. It seems that the Konokovites were satisfied with this, and in a moment disappeared from the field of view of the brunette. "It seems to me that this is too much," Naruko drawled thoughtfully, feeling the huge beast, which was almost 1.5 times larger than herself. "It's good that at least it's not real." Uchiha nodded in confusion, unable to move away from such a gift, and meticulously examined the deer. "Well, Uzumaki, you're going to drag him on," he chuckled. "An impudent Sharingan muzzle, you can't force me to carry heavy D." She stopped for a second, but then continued, "The best friend. By the way, what's in the box from Chuji?" Sasuke turned his gaze to the gift in his hands, he had completely forgotten about it with this deer. The brunette quickly untied the ribbon and opened the lid. At the same moment, Naruko burst out laughing, clutching her stomach. "So that's what he meant by the joys of not only the stomach." She paused for a second, and then could not restrain herself and laughed again. Chuji was very original in his gifts, but this one made a splash. In front of Sasuke there were 2 cakes in the shape of women's breasts, and they looked so that it was simply impossible to distinguish. Uchiha closed the box and tried to forget it all as a terrible dream, but apparently it wasn't meant to happen. Uzumaki grabbed the deer by the horns and began to drag it along, but before they had gone 20 meters, they were almost blown off their feet by Kiba. Inuzuka was riding his dog, with a box in his hands. Seeing this, Sasuke sighed in resignation. Kiba stopped next to Sasuke and quickly shoved a box into his hands. "Happy birthday, friend. You're 16 now, so you're kind of an adult already. I think it will be useful to you in the future, with your character. Especially when you get married," Kiba said in a conspiratorial tone, and then he laughed and rode on. "I'm already scared." Naruko cast a wary glance at the gift. "Well, open it, or something." Sasuke took off the colored wrapper and opened the lid. For a few seconds, he and Uzumaki stood motionless, looking at the gift in shock. In the end, the blonde couldn't stand it and, wincing, turned away. "Kiba, you fucking pervert," she muttered, still unable to turn around. Uchiha, without saying a word, closed the box with a stone face and pursed his lips. "Then we will warn everyone so that they forget about my birthday for future years," Uchiha drawled in a sepulchral voice, and he and Naruko went on. Sasuke still couldn't move away from Kiba's gift. Even Chiji's cakes turned out to be just flowers in comparison. "I think it will be useful to you in the future, with your character. Especially when you get married." Sasuke remembered the words of the dog lover and he shuddered. But a studded collar and a pair of handcuffs, it was too much. The brunette could not even think about such a gift. Naruko speaks correctly. "Fucking perverts, Sasuke, I've already changed my mind, maybe we'll go home, huh?" The girl drawled plaintively. "I can't stand another such gift." Shino was walking towards them and dragging a huge, compared to the previous ones, box in his hands. Aburame stopped and handed it to Uchiha without a word. Sasuke already thought that he would go further, but Shino spoke in his favorite manner. "This gift will be important to you. Many girls are interested in you. Today you turned 16, in our clan it means growing up. Good luck to you, Sasuke." Aburame disappeared, and Sasuke and Naruko exchanged glances. Both of them looked panicked. "Will you open it?" The blonde asked doubtfully. "It's necessary to see what's in there." Uchiha shrugged and opened the box. After a second, he closed it and took a deep breath, trying to calm down. But Uzumaki, it seems, could not stand it. "Are you all kidding me?" she shouted almost to the whole street. The whole box was filled to the top with colorful condoms. And not only multicolored. "I'll tell you the truth, I didn't expect this from Shino," Sasuke breathed out. He could barely hold the boxes in his hands. "Turn around and let's go," the Sharingan bearer said quickly, and was about to leave when voices stopped him. "Sasuke-kun, wait." Sakura exclaimed, hurrying to the birthday boy at full speed. "You haven't looked at our gift yet," Ino said in the same tone as her. Sasuke and Naruko had to turn around to the girls. Uchiha stuffed Uzumaki's previous gifts in, while he stared at Haruno and Yamanaka with an indifferent expression on his face. The girls were positively glowing with happiness. The blonde handed Sasuke the box. "You will definitely need it." Sakura smiled in all 32 teeth. The brunette opened the box and fell into a drop. Uzumaki couldn't help but chuckle. "Of course, so that I would do without it." Sasuke's smile was more like a grin. There was a whole set of styling gels in the box, and a hairdryer on top of everything else. The girls understood everything and decided to quickly retreat, but before that they said something. "Tsunade-sama called you urgently. She wasn't in a very good mood, so I advise you to hurry up." "Let's run away quickly so that we don't meet anyone on the way," Naruko said dully. "I agree. I just can't stand more of these gifts." "I have news for you," the Hokage said slowly and folded her hands in a lock, looking at those present with complete seriousness. Sasuke's premonitions were justified. Tsunade is rarely seen in this state. The woman was pretty battered, fatigue was visible on her face, and dark circles lay under her eyes. "As you know, Akatsuki collect Biju for some reason. Naruto, you are the last Jinchuriki in line, a nine-tailed one is imprisoned in you, and, therefore, they will soon get to you." The blonde paused for a second, apparently to gather her thoughts. There was complete silence in the office, broken only by the snuffling of Tun-Tun, who for some reason was writhing in Shizen's arms. "Jiraiya went to investigate, as we found out the location of the leader of the Akatsuki, Pain. It turned out to be his former student Nagato. Now the Toad Hermit is in a very deplorable state." Tsunade's voice sat down. Naruko staggered and pursed her lips, but her face showed how worried she was. "He has not recovered yet, but his life is not in danger." Uzumaki breathed out a sigh of relief. Everyone in the village knew that Jiraiya had trained her. It happened that he and Ero-sanin disappeared for several months, and then only Naruko returned. And now let's move on to the next topic. Tsunade took a deep breath and looked straight at Sasuke. Uchiha Itachi is dead. It seemed as if this phrase echoed off the walls. Uchiha opened his eyes in surprise and stared at one point, apparently thinking about something. This can't be true, the brunette said in a hoarse voice. He was the best shinobi I knew, he couldn't have been killed. The fact is that no one killed him. Itachi died of the last stage of tuberculosis. He's been pretty weakened lately. The Umbu squad found his body. Sasuke took a step back and closed his eyes to collect his thoughts. I understand everything, you can be free, was all the Hokage said. Sasuke left the office without saying a word and walked briskly away from the residence. Uzumaki hurried after him. Sasuke, wait, she followed him closely. But the brunette did not answer anything, but only walked towards his house. If someone else had decided to congratulate him on his birthday, he would have turned him into a cutlet without a second thought. Don't pretend you can't hear me, Naruko exclaimed, trying to keep up with her friend. I want to help you. Sasuke, I admit that I have never felt what you felt. I do not know what it's like to lose the whole family. The girl was already out of breath, but you can do stupid things. I'm sorry about what happened, Sasuke. Naruko firmly grabbed the brunette by the elbow, with the intention of stopping him, but everything did not happen as expected. Uchiha pushed the blonde away from him with all his might, which caused her to slam into the nearest wall. Naruko's eyes darkened with pain, and the back of her head ached unpleasantly, but she tried not to pay attention to it. Closing her eyes tightly, and then abruptly opening her eyes, she was surprised that Sasuke was still standing in front of her. Knowing his character, she could easily assume that he would disappear at any moment. But now he was standing here and looking at her with a look that sent a chill down her skin. Sasuke, the blonde whispered, and would have gladly backed away, but there was only a cold wall behind her. Uchiha approached Naruko with a slow and measured step and loomed over her like a kite. The girl felt too small next to him when he stood next to her and showed with his whole appearance how worthless she was. You know what, Uzumaki, he said through gritted teeth, you got me. Finally and irrevocably. Naruko understood perfectly well that a completely different Sasuke was standing in front of her now. There was so much hatred in his eyes that she felt uneasy. He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Don't you dare feel sorry for me, do you hear? He hissed, looking down at the girl. I don't need your pity, or yourself. Don't come near me. The next moment he disappeared, leaving the stunned girl alone. Why is my heart pounding so wildly in my chest, she thought in panic. After all, the girl did not feel fear, at most some discomfort, to which she had already become accustomed over all these years, being next to Sasuke. Naruko sat down on a chair that was next to the patient's couch. The window in the ward was open, and the summer wind was blowing through the room. You look too pale, you perverted hermit, Uzumaki whispered with a bitter laugh. You've been well beaten up. The student has surpassed his teacher, right? The blonde did not even wait for an answer to her question, which in fact was rhetorical. Indeed, Jiraiya didn't look like his usual self. There was no eternal light smile, blush, brilliant eyes. He lay still and breathed evenly. You know, you'd give me a good slap on the back of the head right now, if you could. Everything happened too suddenly, the girl faltered. Sasuke found out my secret. Naruko looked around the teacher once more and bit her lip. My eyes tingled treacherously. I'm acting like a girl, really. The blonde laughed softly and quickly wiped the tracks of tears from her cheeks. But seriously speaking, he has become closer to me than before. Uzumaki tilted her head back and stared at the white ceiling. You know, it's all so stupid. I wish you could say something sarcastic to me right now. And it's better to straighten your brains. After all, in fact, I won't be able to pretend to be a guy all my life. Naruko exhaled noisily. It's my duty. I understand this like no one else. And I will fulfill it. But, I would like to be like everyone else for at least a few days. Not to be the bearer of a nine-tailed demon, not to pretend to be a guy, not to pretend to be an idiot. Naruko fell silent and stared at the teacher again. It seemed as if he was about to wake up, yell at her properly, and charge her with a juicy kick in the ass. And then he would brainwash her, and they went to eat ramen together. Sasuke was completely different today. Not the way I'm used to seeing him. They say that common ideas and secrets bring people closer together. It looks like it's true, sensei, the girl said thoughtfully. But I still don't understand what's going on in his soul. A gust of strong wind blew a small piece of paper through the window. Sasuke didn't pay any attention to it at first, but when he saw that something was written there, he picked it up from the floor. He unfolded the message with trembling fingers. There were only a few lines written there. But it was they who helped Sasuke understand what he would do next when the goal of his whole life simply disappeared. If you want to know the real truth about your brother, then I'm waiting for you. Akatsuki's hideout, I assume you'll find it without difficulty, just pay attention to the signs I left. Ryan Tedder, Shadows, where are you going? Sasuke caught up with the blonde's ringing voice, and he reluctantly stopped. Uchiha was already standing near the gate of the village, and it was unrealistic to guess how Naruko got there. The girl had already moved away from their last meeting and now stood with an angry face. Being near Uzumaki was dangerous to health, but Uchiha did not care in any way. Did I put it wrong last time? There was not a single emotion in Sasuke's voice. That's exactly what's wrong, the girl snorted. What are you thinking of just leaving the village like that? Yes, the brunette answered without any hesitation. Naruko was a little taken aback by such a straightforward answer, and later grinned. After all, in some ways Sasuke remained himself. You know perfectly well that I can stop you, she said warningly and clenched her fists. Sasuke just grunted and turned his head to watch the blonde's actions with his peripheral vision. No need to start another tirade about proper behavior, Uzumaki, he said wearily. I repeat, do not approach me. And if I get closer? Naruko narrowed her eyes and a sly smile slid across her lips. Are you going to start a massacre right here? At this very eastern gate, it may well be. But this way I will attract extra attention to my person, and I don't need it. The girl lowered her gaze and took a deep breath. She understood perfectly well that if Sasuke decided to leave, then he would leave, no matter what it cost him. And even if she managed to stop him, he would escape at any other suitable moment. What a strange feeling. And all because of this idiot, the blonde thought resignedly, feeling some bitterness inside. And you don't need to make these grimaces inherent in sweet girls, you're not like that, right, Naruko? Uchiha finally looked Uzumaki in the eyes, and she perfectly saw the mockery in them. Make no mistake, Sasuke, I don't know you exactly as much as you don't know about me, the blonde said in a harsh tone. Well, how? We've known each other for many years. And maybe almost all this time I thought you were just a show-off idiot, but now I know the truth, he grinned. Are you going to blackmail me? Naruko didn't care anymore, she was just trying to keep him as long as possible. Although there was the same gnawing feeling inside. Uzumaki understood out of the corner of her mind that she did not want to let Uchiha go. And no matter how bitter it was for her to admit it, but he became the only person with whom she could safely communicate. Don't pretend, don't act like an idiot. Be yourself. No, Sasuke said theatrically, I just decided to tell the whole truth, I'm all ears. You're pathetic, Naruko, the guy continued. You're trying to seem strong, I don't deny that you seem so. But the catch is that you want to be like everyone else. It annoys you that you are Jinchuriki, that this burden has fallen on your shoulders. Why are you saying all this? Uzumaki folded her arms on her chest and looked expectantly at the interlocutor. I want you to understand the mistake of your phrase. I see right through you, while you think you know what I really am. The girl laughed softly, and it was more like a hysterical laugh. Do you want to hurt me, Sasuke? She arched an eyebrow, showing her superiority, but in fact everything inside was shrinking from tension. He wanted to hurt. Touched. And for the most lively. "I'll continue if you let me," the guy said with emphasis. "I understand perfectly well that you want, like all the girls now, to talk about all sorts of nonsense, discuss guys, and spread gossip. But you tighten your chest, hide your hair, put on men's clothes, and pretend to be a tough guy. And the only one who understands all this is standing in front of you right now. And the only one who understands this is a complete idiot," Naruko muttered, but the next phrase finally knocked her out of the rut. "You've become attached to me." The blonde froze and looked away, not daring to object. If she had, he would have known immediately that it was all true. "But the truth is, you're nothing to me. This village has lost its value for me. I have no one left." And the flow of his words was interrupted by a ringing slap in the face. Naruko was very close. "You have no idea how you infuriate me at such moments," the blonde breathed out and clung to the lips of the brunette. Uchiha froze in surprise. Uzumaki was too close. It's too hot. Too sweet. And just too much for them. He pulled her closer to him, the blonde opened her lips pliably, and Uchiha slipped his tongue inside. Naruko was at first a little confused by the unfamiliar proximity, which seemed so intimate to an inexperienced girl, but after weightlessly ran her hands over the chest of the brunette and wrapped them around his neck. An army of goosebumps ran down her back and took her breath away. Even for Sasuke, this was all new. Yes, he used to do this with other girls, but Naruko. With her, there were absolutely new sensations. She trembled a little in his arms, answered the kiss timidly and uncertainly, even though she kissed him herself. So carried away by the kiss, Sasuke bit Uzumaki's lower lip, causing her to flinch and squeeze his shoulders too hard. Then they abruptly recoiled from each other as if on command. But they didn't take their eyes off, as if asking what had happened. "The silence has become too stressful. It seems you wanted to leave the village," Naruko said dully and looked away. "You seem to want to stop me," Sasuke grinned and approached Uzumaki so that she could feel his breath on her cheek. "I stole your first kiss, didn't I?" he whispered in her ear. "Or would it be more correct to say that you gave it to me?" The blonde twitched and bit her lower lip so hard in annoyance that she felt a salty taste on her tongue. "Go to hell," she growled and turned around, quickly disappeared behind the nearest houses. Now Naruko could calmly admit that such closeness drugged them both. Sasuke didn't push her away, although he could easily have done it. And the moment their lips touched, it was as if she felt all his feelings. There was no hatred or rage. There were only ordinary touches that clouded the mind worse than any drugs. Naruko leaned her forehead against the cold stone wall and exhaled. "My lips were still burning, and my head was in such a mess that I felt sick." But after that, Uzumaki finally realized that she couldn't lose Sasuke. "This is not romance," she assured herself. "He is dear to me. Really dear, and I can't let him go." Then the blonde went to the Uchiha's house. She knew its location perfectly well. There were no people on the street anymore, and only some houses still had lights on. A fresh wind, more than ever, helped the girl to put all her thoughts on the shelves. But no one could change her decision. Climbing into Sasuke's room, she ran through all the little things with her eyes and noticed a piece of paper on the table. "How inconsiderate for a shinobi," Naruko muttered, reading the text, and was more and more surprised by every second. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she put her head in her hands and took a deep breath. "Idiot." A barely audible exclamation escaped, "and I'm still getting into trouble." The girl jerked her head up and started looking for a clean piece of paper with a pen. "Bachan, please don't worry. You know yourself that only I can stop him. He has been suffering from an extreme degree of idiocy for many years. I learned this a long time ago. A stubborn sheep, you can't say anything, you could carve roots, give their influence. But he can get in such an ass that we never even dreamed of. Don't worry too much, take care of the health of your subordinates. We will come back in a few days, we will write a detailed report. A chair flew out of the window of the Hokage residence, and then a frantic scream was heard. Uzumaki. Naruko turned around and chuckled softly to herself, marveling at the sound range of Tsunade's voice. Even at the gate, a scream could be heard coming from the residence. It seems that she almost woke up half the village. Naruko stopped at the entrance to some completely unremarkable cave and scratched her head thoughtfully. There was no plan in her head, since all her thoughts were busy with how to return the wayward Uchiha to Konoha. She knew perfectly well that she had come to those who were hunting for her. It would be the same if she came to them with a sign on her chest, "I am the Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed." But, in principle, it was only without a sign. I'm an idiot, the girl summed up and grinned to herself. But it wouldn't be Naruko if she didn't do as her ass wants. No, she wasn't afraid at all. In any case, Sasuke would have helped her. Probably. CSR, get ready and go into this damn shelter already, she muttered sternly to herself and took a step forward. Then everything went much more relaxed. The girl took another step, and then another. The sunlight had finally disappeared, and now the eyes needed time to get used to the dim illumination of the torches on the walls. Uzumaki focused on chakra concentration and tried to find Sasuke. Apparently, there was someone else in the shelter, but the blonde did not know him. Naruko continued walking forward until she noticed a dark figure in a corner of one of the corridors. The girl's knees buckled, and she barely managed to lean against the wall. Exhaling with relief, the blonde noticed that Uchiha himself was standing in front of her. But there was something wrong with him. He was depressed. Sasuke didn't even seem to notice her presence. Uzumaki walked up to him with a slow step and pulled his sleeve slightly. The next moment, the brunette grabbed her by the throat and pressed her against the wall. Naruko dug her nails into his arm and started waving her legs. When Sasuke finally saw who exactly was standing in front of him, he opened his eyes in surprise. "POV Sasuke, are you crazy?" The girl hissed when I took my hand away from her throat. "Am I crazy yet? What the hell are you doing here?" I muttered through my teeth, enjoying watching Naruko shiver under my gaze. Stupid girl. No sanity. She came to say hello to her own death. And now he's standing in front of me and innocently blinks his eyes. How I sometimes want to strangle her. Although no, strangling is too humane on my part. She gave me a lot of nerves. You look like you're going to kill someone. I'm going to, but I'm not going to. It seems that she finally understood my intentions and grabbed my elbow. We need to leave, Sasuke, Uzumaki said softly. But then I heard footsteps behind us. My heart had treacherously slowed down its rhythm, and I could easily hear its pounding. But we urgently needed to do something. Hide your chakra, now, I hissed at her. While the girl was trying to hide her chakra, I didn't waste any time either. Pulling off her bandana, I tousled her blonde curls, which caused confusion on her part. If you don't want to die right here, then be quiet, I growled and climbed under the blonde's t-shirt. Then she panicked and tried to escape, but I pressed her against the wall. Yes, if you look from the outside, the pose is very frank. Naruko really thought I was harassing her. But it was only important to me to keep this stupid woman alive. Picking up the bandages, I pulled them out from under the girl's t-shirt in a couple of seconds and pulled off her jacket. What are you doing? She sobbed when I took her chin and gave her an attentive look. Calm down and focus on concentration, coward, I whispered and grinned, noticing how her face distorted. A man came around the corner, and Uzumaki visibly tensed. I felt it all over my body, as I was still pressing her against the wall. Sasuke? Madara's surprised voice brought me out of my thoughts. I looked up at him indifferently. She won't be a problem. This girl is devoted to me and will never tell me anything if I don't ask her. I tried my best so that my voice God forbid, wouldn't break. It seems that Madara did not believe too much in the words I said. She reminds me of someone, Uchiha thoughtfully drawled. Have you known her for a long time and are 100% sure of her? I glanced at Uzumaki and grinned. She just opened her eyes wider and swallowed nervously. We've known each other almost since birth. And now this silly girl ran after me, because she thought that I would not return to the village anymore. Naruko tightened her grip on the edges of my shirt, and it did not escape Madara's gaze. In any other case, kill her, an icy tone that brooks no objections. For a split second, he reminded me of my father's voice. But I pushed away the stupid memories and turned my concentrated gaze to Uchiha. Absolutely. Can we go now? I arched an eyebrow questioningly. Madara hesitated for a moment, and then nodded. I grabbed Uzumaki's hand, squeezing her wrist until it crunched, and dragged her away from the shelter. The girl was growling something, trying to pull her hand away, but I genuinely didn't care about it. The main thing is to get out. Sasuke, let go. I heard a strangled squeak, and when the light finally appeared, I pushed the girl out. She immediately pressed her hand to her chest, and I noticed a dark purple stain spreading around her wrist in the form of my fingers. That's even better. For the next couple of weeks, she will remember about this incident. Stupid, I drawled. What a fool you are, after all. I leaned against the rock with relief and looked at the blonde from under my brows. It seems that she had enough impressions for today. What happened there? Suddenly she asked the question, frowning. Has she decided to ask me about it yet? Damn, right now I definitely want to strangle her. And better, what are you doing? The end of her sentence was drowned in a kiss. Naruko froze, not knowing what to do. Then she made pathetic attempts to escape from my grip, but eventually relaxed and responded to the kiss. The girl exhaled sweetly when I pulled her lower lip, and then ran the tip of my tongue over it. Uzumaki squeezed my shoulders, urging me to stop, but I was so carried away that I didn't notice it. Sasuke, move. I shut her up again with a kiss, this time rough, deep, from which all the oxygen quickly left her lungs. I gathered her wrists together and lifted her over her head so she couldn't move. At first, the blonde was not against it, but after I started to go down with kisses along her neck, she began to squirm. Please stop. A faint moan escaped from her chest as I ran my tongue over the cleavage between her breasts. Sasuke, wake up. I pulled away from her face and stared intently into her clear blue eyes. She's scared. Hell, even in a battle with the strongest shinobi, she didn't feel any fear, but as soon as I went beyond the limits of what was allowed for a few steps, she was afraid of it. Let me go, she said in a hoarse voice, and I opened my palms, without any argument. Turning away from the blonde, I took a deep breath, and then exhaled. Hell, I didn't even realize what had happened just a couple of minutes ago. I just wanted to make fun of her. But in the end I couldn't stop. She's really not like all the previous girls. If they easily gave themselves to me, without any problems, then Naruko. She's like a forbidden fruit. And he is, as they say, sweet. How many years has Sakura had feelings for me? I know they are sincere, the girl really loves me. But I have absolutely nothing for her. I'm not even interested in her. And Uzumaki. Damn, this stupid girl was able to stupefy me in just a few minutes. And who knows, maybe I wouldn't have been able to stop and would have taken it right here. It sounds just awful, I'm losing my mind with her. I can't assess the situation sensibly. I can only hear her ragged breathing, feel the burning touch of her fingers on my skin and feel soft lips. Naruko quickly walked forward. I could clearly see how her hands were shaking, how she was furiously pulling on her jacket and trying to put the tangled strands into a bandana. Now she was even more afraid of me, but I became even closer to her. POV Sasuke. The peaceful silence of my room was broken by a short knock on the window, and then I heard ringing laughter from the street. Lazily getting out of bed, I trudged to the window and opened it. Sakura stared at me, confused to the point of horror. The girl abruptly recoiled from me and, after a quick look from head to toe, and then timidly smiled, "Sasuke-kun, do you want to go to the river with us? We're all going, and so is Naruto." I arched an eyebrow in surprise, and then mentally grinned. And why, exactly, did she mention Uzumaki? It seems that no one from the village knows where Naruko and I went. It turns out that the blonde very skillfully fooled the Hokage herself that she did not notice the catch. She told her a fabulous story about how I wanted to leave the village, and did not mention a word about Akatsuki, and she heroically stopped me and returned me to Konoha. Well, since everyone is coming, I shrugged my shoulders and jumped out of the window with ease. After a couple of seconds, Sakura landed next to me and immediately bumped into Ino's gaze. Yamanaka had already quartered Sakura several times in her mind, but the pink-haired one did not remain in debt and smiled triumphantly. Naruko was the most extreme, and her face had to be seen. The girl winced and constantly muttered, "about and without," which was not like her. "Sasuke-kun," Ino stretched out sweetly and took me by the arm, like some kind of girlfriend. "Are you going to swim?" "No," I even answered too sharply, which made the blonde sigh in disappointment. "It's a pity." "And why are you and Naruto so boring?" she said indignantly, and then jumped away from me and dragged Sakura away somewhere. I was surprised to see the girls whispering and throwing very ambiguous glances at me. After another phrase said by Ino, Haruno blushed like a cancer and shrank. "It seems that they are building another plan for seduction," Nara said with a certain laziness, carefully examining the girls. "There would be something to seduce," Uzumaki snorted, and I turned in her direction. "And you have nothing to say?" I said mockingly, watching with pleasure as the blonde clenched her jaw and threw a withering look at me. "Pompous turkey," she rolled her eyes. Without answering anything, I still continued to squint at Uzumaki. She was licking and biting her lips all the time, apparently nervous or thinking about something. I've never paid attention to the little things that happened to her. And now she occupied all my thoughts, and I wanted to make her mad more than ever. To see how angry she is at me, how she screams and waves her arms, how she frowns, which causes a crease to appear between her eyebrows. I was surprised to notice that we had already left the village and were now approaching a small river. The shore was sandy, but a green lawn was visible in the distance. There were sprawling trees everywhere, their branches gently swaying in the wind. The sun was at its zenith, so it was best to sit in the shade, which is exactly what we decided to do. The girls amicably spread out several bedspreads, and then threw off their outerwear, and, left in their swimsuits, ran to swim. The guys were in no hurry, they pulled off their clothes slowly, but still headed for the water. Only Kiba distinguished himself. The dogman threw off his clothes in a second and flew into the water together with Akamaru with a bullet, raising a whole fountain of spray, which made half of the girls squeal, not getting used to the cold. I pulled off my shirt and collapsed next to Naruko, who was sitting with her knees pressed to her chest. She sullenly watched the guys having fun in the water. Chuji carried Ino on his back, and then threw her into the water. Laughter was heard, and then indignant exclamations like, "Kiba, tell your dog not to let out gases here." "Do you want to join them?" I asked, phlegmatically. The girl turned away from me, so I couldn't see the expression on her face, but I was sure that she was frowning with annoyance and clenching her fists. "Of course, and then they'll be surprised to notice that I have breasts," she said tartly. "Uzumaki, why is your hair long?" "Oh, man, where did your banana go?" "Tell me, Naruto, when did you manage to become a girl?" The blonde continued, changing her intonation with each question. I would laugh, I assured Naruko. "How do I want to strangle me?" she finished for me. "You're late, honey," I chuckled. "It's my eternal desire to strangle you. But since some time, some more." She turned around and opened her eyes in surprise. Naruko was about to move away from me, but I abruptly stood up and pulled her by the hand. The blonde tried to pull her wrist away, but I grabbed her tighter and grabbed her by the waist. "What are you doing, you halfwit? Let me go immediately," she growled, and almost pulled out of my grip. But I grabbed Naruko by the buttocks and threw him over my shoulder. The girl began to squirm, which gave me some discomfort, because I barely had time to intercept her in another place so that she would not fall. When the water touched my feet, I picked up my pace, and then opened my palms. Uzumaki opened her mouth to scream, but did not have time and with a characteristic sound went under the water. Everyone fell silent and stared at me. I decided that he should refresh himself too. I shrugged my shoulders, and everyone laughed together. The next moment, Naruko emerged from the water, holding a bandana with her hands, which managed to half slide off her head. The girl silently began to go ashore, which was not like her. I rolled my eyes and went straight after her. And when did she become such a bore? Ah, yes, from the moment I almost raped her at the Akatsuki lair. But it shouldn't have affected her worldview so much. And an ordinary kiss doesn't mean anything. She, like all other girls, has a habit of exaggerating everything in matters of the heart. "So where are you going?" I called after her. When we finally disappeared behind the trees, the bandana fell off her head and wet hair fell down her back. I was once again surprised at how she managed to grow such long braids in just 3 years. "Away from you, asshole," she snarled and spun around to face me. "Why are you following me like a tail? Get off me altogether." The blonde pushed me away, which made me stagger and take a step back, since the force was still present in her. "And if I don't want to?" I tilted my head to the side and noticed how Naruko tensed. We were alone again. And she was scared again. Now it's my turn to lead. I pushed the girl back insistently, causing her to rest against the trunk of a tree. "What's wrong with you, Naruko? What are you afraid of?" I whispered hoarsely in her ear, leaning my hands on the tree just above her shoulders. "I'm not afraid," the blonde said with disgust, but I perfectly noticed how her fingertips were trembling. The girl's breathing was strained, and she stubbornly avoided my gaze. So I took her chin and lifted her so that she looked into my eyes. "You're lying," I whispered against her lips. "You're afraid. But not me. And this closeness." She was about to start denying everything I said, I'm sure. But I couldn't. Uzumaki exhaled raggedly, and then closed her eyes so as not to see my piercing gaze. "And you are even more afraid of what you feel for me, am I right?" Without waiting for an answer to my question, I continued. "You're right. You're trying to shut me out with all your might, but you can't. Are you attracted to me? I hate you." The girl threw her head back, leaning against a tree, thereby exposing her neck. I touched her skin with my lips. Naruko wrapped her weightless touch around my neck and buried her hand in my hair. Then followed another light kiss on the neck. Hot. Languidly. The air around him seemed to have become thick. Uzumaki exhaled sweetly when I found her lips. Eyes closed. Fingers intertwined. The girl responded to the kiss, confidently weaving her tongue with mine. The touch is burning. The senses are heightened. I gently pulled away from her and looked into her misty eyes. Now their color has turned blue. "Did you use some kind of technique on me?" Her gaze finally focused on me. I rested my forehead against hers. "No techniques, Naruko," I whispered, "just you and me." "Why is all this happening to me?" She smiled sadly and ran her fingertips over my cheek. Our conversation was so quiet that no one else could hear it. Even the birdsong seems to have disappeared. Only the rustling of the trees remained. "Don't ask stupid questions," I said, and touched her lips one last time. Naruko exhaled calmly when I recoiled from her. "I'll go back to the others," I said calmly. Uzumaki nodded weakly and walked towards the village on wobbly legs. "I'm not even going to reflect on what happened. No regrets." Another kiss that caused such a storm of emotions in me. Now there is no need to dwell on this. POV Naruko. For a long time I noticed the strange behavior of Uchiha. No, he wasn't smiling at everyone and waving his pen. It's just that lately Sasuke has become even paler than usual, avoided friendly gatherings, and was constantly immersed in himself. And today I noticed him packing a briefcase for some reason. Grandma couldn't send him on a mission, I knew that for sure. Then there was only one thought left. Sasuke decided to pay another visit to this Madara. This guy seemed too strange to me, and he didn't look like an idiot Toby. If he was constantly jumping like a stung and talking about himself in the third person, then this. It was immediately clear that it was better not to quarrel with this person. He certainly leaves quite a vivid impression. But I strongly doubted that I could stop Sasuke again. Perhaps I didn't even doubt, but I was sure that he would leave. But a few thoughts were bothering me. For what purpose Uchiha is going there, and also what is going on between us? Perhaps it was the second question that stirred my whole being. After that moment in the forest, I began to twitch even more often because of nothing, to turn around, to be nervous. And I couldn't stay close to Sasuke for long enough and not lose my composure. Especially when I noticed his grins, the strange cat squint and the look as if nothing had happened between us. I would probably have done the same, but I couldn't. I didn't have the strength to forget all this. Well, what are you doing here at this time, Naruko? Sasuke asked phlegmatically, not even turning to face me when I lazily sat down on the windowsill in his room. I would like to ask the same question. Are you going for a walk to the Akatsuki lair and back? I said icily, only then did he turn around. Uchiha froze for a moment when he saw me, and then shook his head and grinned to himself. What, Uzumaki, decided to stop in this way? He chuckled and leaned on the table. Yes, I agree, I chose the right outfit. Since it was already dark, there was almost no one on the streets. Sasuke and I were not so far from each other at home, and I had no intention of changing into a guy just to see him. Therefore, I was wearing a regular t-shirt, dark tight pants, and shinobi sandals. I didn't put on a protector, I forgot when I was hastily going, fearing that I wouldn't make it in time, but I wasn't too lazy to take a bag with kunai and shurikens. I left my hair loose, so now my braids fell almost to the waist. I didn't even think about it, I snorted. You know, Sasuke, I can easily tell Tsunade about all your adventures. I don't think the Hokage will be happy that we have a spy in the village. A spy? Uchiha laughed softly. Am I a spy? Don't do a stupid circus, she said, as she cut off, she should do it more often. I can remind you who your own brother was, Sasuke. Uchiha's face instantly changed and became impenetrable. Damn, but this is not good, the brunette clenched his jaw and gave me a burning look. But you won't tell me anything anyway, Naruko. There was so much confidence in his voice that I winced. Are you so sure of that? I grinned. More than. A hot whisper passed over my ear, which made me almost fall off the windowsill. But Uchiha squeezed my forearms so hard that I was already 100% sure that I would have bruises. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down, as it was quite dangerous to be closer than a meter with him. Especially now, you came to stop me, so come on, I'm waiting. He pulled away from me. I wasn't even going to do it, I informed him, and Sasuke raised his eyebrows in surprise. It hurts to crucify myself in front of you if I don't achieve anything with this. How interesting. He drawled, looking me over like a test rat. And what did you want to achieve with this meeting? Maybe some hot confessions from me? That I can't live without you, I want to touch you, take over your body and soul, or what do they usually say? I pursed my lips and tried to calm down. No, of course, I didn't expect something like this, but the changes in his mood, as well as his attitude towards me, are frightening. You won't hear them, dear. I'm only interested in your body. I do not deny that you are quite beautiful, but I would not go for more than just a lemon. Hurtful. It's a shame. I even caught my breath from such impudence. But I found the strength to smile weakly. So far, no one has told me that I'm beautiful, I drawled nostalgically, pretending not to notice his words. Although I do not deny, I really wanted to give him a pretty bream. Sasuke, apparently, perfectly noticed the change in my mood. Are you trying to pretend that you don't care? And he talks like a real maniac. Can't you see that? Sasuke froze for a second, examining me with a picky look, and then picked up a lock of my hair and twirled it in his hands. Although, you could help me rebuild the clan. I opened my eyes in surprise, and now I wanted to hit him so hard. And then another and another until but you, Naruko, pretend to be a guy, he grinned, and I don't need a girl who pretends to be who knows what. I clenched my jaw and lowered my eyes. Somehow, I didn't apply for a place next to you, I hissed. But now it really hurt. Although, that's putting it mildly. He really hurt me. What are you? Maybe I can't say that. But your blonde head is often visited by such thoughts, isn't it? I looked up at him and waited for the comedy to continue. Just you, Naruko, boy. And you will remain with them, for it is unclear how long. While others will have husbands and children, you will suffer. And I'll find myself a decent girl. He approached me. Not a guy. These words were so deeply embedded in my subconscious that I could no longer control myself. This turkey finally brought me out. In a split second, I grabbed the kunai, and, picking up my hair, waved so hard that the blade cut through the air with a characteristic sound, followed by light strands. Sasuke gave me an astonished look when the long curls scattered on the floor. I opened my hand, and the kunai fell to the floor with a clang. Running my hand over the back of my head, I smiled bitterly. And how could I laugh at all in such a situation? And then I burst out laughing like a real hysterical woman. She just took it and laughed, which caused confusion among the descendant of the Uchiha clan. That's it, kid. Now you have a guy in front of you, I shrugged. You're crazy, the brunette drawled, dumbfounded, looking from my hair to me. Now I had a very cute square, at least that's how I saw myself in the reflection of the mirror behind Sasuke. On the back of the head, the hair was even shorter than Sakura's, and in front they fell in waves, to the collarbones. Oh, what a shame, you like girls with long hair, I drawled theatrically. You will regret this act, Naruko, Uchiha said with full seriousness, the only thing I regret is meeting you. You alone have hurt me more than all of them put together. And more because I'm attached to you. I've become attached like I've never been to anyone else. I didn't want to see his face anymore, so I jumped out of the window and walked calmly down the alley to my house. I no longer cared that people might notice me. Spit end of POV. Naruko, the first thing I felt was pain all over my body. I tried to breathe in, but it turned out to be with great difficulty. I felt a strange burning sensation in my throat, and my legs felt numb. But after a few seconds, fragments of the past began to come back to me. Task. Spies. And then Raikiri in the chest and darkness. I opened my eyes with difficulty, and they instantly got used to the dim lighting. It was impossible to understand where I was. Gathering my strength, I raised myself on my elbows and almost suffocated from an attack of pain that pierced my entire body. Come on, pull yourself together. Taking a sitting position, I took a deep breath and closed my eyes with relief. It was getting much better, but the thoughts that visited my head could not leave me in any way. I died, I remembered that for sure. Looking around, I realized that I was in a dark room. The only light source was a lamp on the floor, but it was quite enough. I was lying on a futon, carefully covered by someone. There were no more pieces of furniture, just bare stone walls. I raised my palms and examined them with a critical look. Then I was stunned. My hands. They were different. Palms are bigger, fingers are longer. Touching my face, I couldn't understand anything, but when I put my hands on my hair and ran them through, I almost choked with surprise. The last time, they didn't even reach my shoulders, and now I couldn't find an end to them, that is, they were almost to the floor. My breasts. It has also increased by a good 2 sizes. What's going on? I asked myself. Oh, I see you've already woken up. A thoughtful exclamation was heard in the area of the door, and I raised my head. In front of me stood a man in a strange black cloak with red clouds. I couldn't examine his appearance, because his face was hidden by a strange orange mask. Who are you? I whispered in panic and crawled back. I couldn't fight now, it was clear to any fool, but the one who was standing in front of me now scared me. I won't hurt you, don't worry. His voice softened and he knelt down so that our faces were on the same level. The man put a broad palm on his mask, and then with one deft movement tore it off his face. I froze and pursed my lips. My eyes filled with tears in an instant, and I sobbed softly, unable to restrain myself. Abito. I whispered and hugged him tightly in a fit. He was confused for the first few seconds, but then he hugged me back and hugged me to him. POV Rin. I pulled away from Abito, and a treacherous lump in my throat prevented me from saying anything. Looking at him and marveling at how much he had changed, I reached out to his face and ran my fingertips over the scars. Uchiha followed all my movements without stopping. I couldn't get used to myself. I even had the idea that I somehow ended up in another body, but the way Abito looked at me said something else. But how? I asked in a hoarse voice. The brunette intercepted my palm and brought it to his lips. I had completely forgotten what he looked like, and I blamed myself for it. I only remember the shiny black eyes and a wide smile, and also his voice. I shuddered at the touch of warm lips, but I didn't take my hand away. What's up, Rin? He whispered, and a wave of goosebumps ran down my arm from his breath. How did I stay alive, or how did I resurrect you? I was about to ask both, but for some reason I froze. You've changed, Abito. Aren't you whining already? I smiled sadly, but I wanted to cry out loud myself. How many years have passed? More than 10 years, he breathed, still holding my hand in his. More than 10? So much time. What happened to Kakashi? Abito's face changed, and he released my hand from his hands. The man pursed his lips and looked away, as if thinking about something. Don't you dare talk about him, Rin, he said in such an icy tone that I felt uneasy. After all, he has changed. There was no trace of the cute little boy. Now I see a completely different person in front of me, and this is not expressed in appearance. I feel that he has become different inside. I have to tell you how I died, I said nervously. I saw you die. What? I was taken aback and froze. How could he see? Because, Abito, it's not Kakashi's fault, I swear to you, I whispered convulsively, touching his cheek. It was my decision. Don't be silly, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. I decided to die myself. She threw herself at Raikiri. And I don't regret it, but do you know why? He looked up at me. Because it's my duty. I saved the village, Abito. Uchiha looked at me with an incredulous look, and then pressed me to him. I was amazed at this behavior. You have no idea what I had to go through to bring you back to life, he began to say softly. It hurt so much, Rin. I held your body in my hands and understood that you would never smile at me again, would not comfort me in a difficult moment, and would not even stand up for the smug turkey Hataki. He grinned at the last phrase. And now you're sitting in front of me, alive and unharmed. But I'm a stranger to you, right? You have no idea how much I've missed you, Abito. I nuzzled his shoulder. And I don't care that you've changed. I'm not leaving you, do you hear? I would like to believe it, Uchiha replied dully. I pulled away from Abito a little and looked at him suspiciously. And where are we? In Akatsuki's lair. Seeing my puzzled look, the brunette grinned. The most dangerous criminal organization in the world. Excuse me, what? I gave him a startled look. Did you join a criminal organization? I had it. Uchiha shrugged his shoulders, which shocked me even more. Oh, my God, I gasped and rubbed my temples. Is there anything else that might shock me? How did you survive, Obito? Uchiha Madara found me and became my mentor, he said in an even voice. The same Madara? It seems that I have already realized that I will not be surprised with this person, so I decided to take everything more calmly. Who fought with Hashirama Senju? Yes, the same one. I tried to digest everything that was said, but my head was still spinning, and now? He's dead, Uchiha finished for me, and I nodded thoughtfully. Then how did you bring me back to life? Obito smiled. Have you heard of Rinnegan? He asked. Don't tell me. I stopped and closed my eyes. Oh, my God. Rikudo Sennin's eyes. How, Obito? It's just a legend. With the help of this legend, I brought you back, my former partner grinned. Thank you, Obito, I whispered and smiled, not only for that. For faith and efforts. End of POV. Rina, stunned Naruko, was pushed into the Hokage's office and placed right in front of Tsunade's desk. When the girl turned around, she saw that Uchiha Sasuke himself was standing at the door, lazily leaning against the wall. What's wrong, Bachan? Uzumaki asked cautiously and tried to remain calm. How could he return to the village? And most importantly, how did Grandma react to this? For some reason, I don't see a trashed office and a crippled Uchiha, the blonde thought. It's been more than a week since Sasuke left the village. At first, Naruko was freaking out, breaking things without getting caught and snapping at her friends, which confused them. And now Uchiha returned to the village as if nothing had happened, and Naruko was waiting for the right moment to punch him properly. Uzumaki, take off your bandana, Hokage said in an icy tone. What? The girl stammered and stared at Tsunade with shock. What I heard. Quickly. Naruko pulled off her bandana, and her hair fell over her shoulders. Now they were much shorter, but therefore no less chic. Now take off your jacket. Do you want to rape me? The girl was indignant, but she still took off her jacket, remaining in one t-shirt. No, that won't do, the Hokage drawled thoughtfully. I can't see your breasts. Untie the bandages. Uzumaki, dumbfounded, pinched her hand, thinking that it was a bad dream, but it turned out that everything was true. The girl cast a skeptical glance at the Uchiha, and then lifted the t-shirt, found the edge of the bandage and unwound it with a quick movement. Now it was clearly visible that the blonde had breasts. That's better, Hokage grunted with satisfaction, then got up from the table and grabbed Naruko by the scruff of the neck. Now let's go. Are you taking me to execution? Uzumaki snorted and freed herself from Tsunade's steel grip. But seeing her look, the girl shivered and continued to follow the Hokage in silence now. Uchiha also walked in silence, looking at Uzumaki from under his brows. Naruko pursed her lips and mentally began to plot a bloody revenge. Well, Naruko, are you ready? She smiled at Tsunade with such an insidious smile, which made the girl uncomfortable. The next moment, she was put out the door in front of the residence. The hum that had been standing before subsided and everyone began to look at the blonde in shock. Naruko swallowed and realized that absolutely all the villagers were standing in front of her now. Wow, the nine-tailed one actually turned out to be a very cute fox, an exclamation was heard from the crowd. Wow, what a beauty, someone else chimed in. Uzumaki blushed and pressed her hands to her chest. Naruto, why didn't you say? You mean you didn't tell us? Well, now, it seems, there is no need to say anything, the girl smiled uncertainly and shrugged her shoulders. Sincere laughter was heard from the crowd, which was picked up by others. Uzumaki stood there and also smiled stupidly. I didn't think that they would just accept me like that. POV Naruko, what made you do this, Grandma? I said skeptically, folding my arms over my chest. Hokage looked at me quite seriously. It cost me a lot of effort to persuade the elders to take this step, she said glumly. Tsunade, what happened? I said with emphasis, unable to stand it. The woman gave me a threatening look, as if reminding me who I was and who she was. Sometimes, two informal notes slipped into our conversations. I could call her by name without any pretexts, and she didn't even pay attention to it, or pretended to. Sasuke was in Akatsuki's lair, she said. So, did he tell you after all? I grinned inwardly, but outwardly kept a straight face. He found out the plans of their leader and reported everything to Konoha. The threat of war has receded. Why did they collect Biju? I frowned. Naruko, this is extremely confidential information. No one has the right to disclose it until some time, Hokage informed me. Uchiha Madara is Uchiha Obito, the former partner of Hatake Kakashi, who died while performing a mission with the fourth Hokage. He used some kind of technique to resurrect another member of the fourth's team, Noara Rin, so this is what he wanted? I summed up, yes. I exhaled dejectedly and bit my lip. It was easy to guess that Sasuke didn't go to Akatsuki's lair to investigate the situation. He wouldn't have done it without personal gain. So what exactly happened there? Thank him, Naruko, of course, Grandma. I'll go and thank you right now. I nodded and smiled weakly. Well, darling, are you ready to tell me everything? I swung my legs off the windowsill and looked at Sasuke with a withering look. What are you talking about, Uzumaki? He arched an eyebrow in surprise, to which I only snorted contemptuously. Don't act like an idiot, I hissed. Unfortunately, it doesn't suit you. Why were you in Akatsuki's lair? Sasuke froze for a second, and then his lips twisted into a grin. Uchiha looked at me like I was crazy. Didn't Tsunade-sama tell you? I am once again amazed at how you get away with it. I tried to keep calm, but my nerves seemed to make my eye twitch. Damn, how I want to punch him. I don't know what you're talking about, he shrugged carelessly. The next moment, his cute little face met my right fist. Well, here, I couldn't resist after all. It's a pity, of course, to spoil such a handsome man, but this bastard deserved this blow. Oops, I shook my head regretfully. I'm sorry, I don't understand what happened, I sighed theatrically. Uchiha tore his hand away from his face and noticed blood on his palm. Now tell me what you forgot in Akatsuki's lair, I hissed. I was worried about you, idiot, he rolled his eyes. And you're thanking me like this? I was hoping for a slightly different thank you. Let me think, most likely, on gratitude in the form of me in lace underwear on your bed? Or how did you put it last time? I said sarcastically, do you have lace underwear? He raised his eyebrows in surprise. I'm going to break your nose, I swear, I growled and pressed him against the wall, the good force allowed. Tell me. It seems that Sasuke liked to dominate more, so the next moment our pose changed a little. Just say thank you and get lost, Naruko, he said through his teeth, looming over me. I'm not too happy to see anyone right now. I pressed my lips together and looked into his eyes. Only then did I notice the change. The shade of his eyes has changed, damn it. They became only a tone lighter around the pupil, but it was possible to see it only with close contact. What's wrong with your eyes? Sasuke froze in surprise at first, and then laughed softly. Is he having a tantrum? Did I say something funny? I said icily, you noticed, right? He grinned, and the next second I saw a scarlet Sharingan. Only he was unusual. Around his pupil, instead of the usual 3 volumes, black patterns diverged. What is it? I managed, still looking at his eyes. Mangekyo Sharingan, he replied, and pulled away from me. Uchiha blinked a couple of times, and the Sharingan disappeared. I was still standing against the wall, unable to move. So that's the true motive of your actions, I drawled thoughtfully. And I already thought that you really decided to do something for the good. And no, I was wrong, I shrugged. Sasuke gave me a look that should have turned me into a handful of ashes, but unfortunately it didn't happen. Any other questions, Naruko? He specifically highlighted my name, which made me wince. I didn't answer him, so I just disappeared from his field of vision. POV Naruko, the sun was shining brightly outside, only occasionally hiding behind fluffy clouds. A light wind carried a soft summer smell around the circumference, and the birds did not stop chattering. But for me, it was completely different. The sun was scorching mercilessly, which made me constantly squint and did not understand where I was going. Dust was blowing around from the wind, and the singing of birds was already sitting in the liver. I've never felt so lousy. Although no, it was. As a child, when everyone hated me, I lived only in pain. But now it's a different feeling. Something is gnawing at me from the inside, bubbling in my chest. I wanted to cry out loud, yell at the whole Konoha, and it's best to go to Toad Mountain and spend the rest of my life there. Uchiha's face appears in front of his face every few seconds. The way he tells me that I'm worthless, that he's only interested in my body. I am a toy for him, no more, and I am well aware of this, but why did my chest squeeze like that? And then I see his eyes, not the same as before. No, of course, Sharingan has always made me be on my guard because I don't own Genjutsu or its special privileges, but this. Now there was another Sasuke in front of me. I don't love him, no. And I'm not trying to deny my feelings like other girls. A classic of the genre, fell in love with a handsome man, he tricked you around his finger and, in the end, he doesn't need you. But the situation with me is completely different. Damn it, don't understand my feelings, and even more, so his feelings. When I see him, I want to feel his touch and at the same time, smear on the wall. Give him a good slap in the face, and then express an obscene tirade of my thoughts. And then I see his eyes, and I can't move. It penetrates through and through. I remember his look from childhood. From the moment the Uchiha clan ceased to exist, I realized that Sasuke had matured. He looked like a cute little boy, a beautiful boy, nothing to say. But his eyes were always grown up, not like the others. He tried to hide everything behind a mask of indifference, but longing and pain are not easy to hide. And now he's hurt me again. In my heart, I still hoped that he was doing all this for me. Persuaded Hokage, changed my life dramatically, risked. But in fact, he acted only for his own purposes. Egoist. I leaned against the cool wall and buried my forehead in the stone joints. She exhaled sharply and winced. And then, even surprising herself, she hit this very wall with such force that cracks passed through it, and her knuckles responded with a dull pain. And this is even without using the chakra. Hey, Uzumaki, don't spoil the property of the village. A chuckle was heard from behind me, and I started up. Turning around, I saw Shikamaru, who yawned and then stared thoughtfully at the clouds. Are you killing yourself because of Sasuke? As if nothing had happened, he asked and looked at me as if he knew the answer perfectly well. What? And no. I was confused and instantly frowned. What do you need? Why so rude? You're a girl after all, he snorted, and there was not a drop of venom in his voice. Nara only stated the fact, and so carelessly that I wanted to become the same for a while. Kazekage is coming today, and Tsunade-sama decided that you should unwind with the guests from Suna. I suppose you're waiting for Temari's arrival? I chuckled softly as I walked past Shikamaru and noticed how embarrassed he was. Not at all, he rolled his eyes, and I could barely contain my laughter. The shackled genius looked too comical. We walked towards the residence in complete silence. And strangely, it was with Nara that this silence did not bother me, although I was still a chatterbox, everyone knew that. A few minutes later we arrived at our destination and I saw Tsunade flash her eyes in my direction. But it turned out that she was not looking at me at all, but behind my back. Oh, here in Naru, that? I heard Temari stop when I turned around. The jaws of the whole trio got acquainted with the floor. Even Gaara himself stood in complete shock, afraid to make an unnecessary move. This amused me, and I laughed softly. They came to their senses from my laughter. Kazekage was the first to wake up and came up to me with long strides. "What's wrong with you, Naruto?" he said softly, as if he had learned a terrible secret. Temari and Kankuro pulled up behind him, but they were more squeezed. I sighed with displeasure and unbuttoned my jacket. Under the mesh t-shirt, you could easily see the breasts. "It's good that I put on a bra for such incidents." This is what for. Kankuro was silent for a second, and then hopefully began to examine my body, which confused me too much, and I buttoned my jacket. "The second size." Temari snorted irritably, and then slapped her older brother with a savory slap on the back of the head, which made the guy stagger, and there was a lot we didn't know. Now this question was addressed to the Hokage, who came up. Kankuro's face twisted from such a question, and he gave me a slightly strange look. The guy carefully looked me up and down, even tilting his head to the side several times. Temari stood with her arms folded and watched all this with a grin. And when I felt that my hands were rising by themselves, I gasped softly at all. Everyone immediately stared at me, including Tsunade. When I saw the bluish threads that came from the tips of Kankuro's fingers, I realized what was the matter. "Are you done?" Gaara's icy tone rasped, and I turned a surprised look at him. It seems that his older brother often bothers him, since he addresses him like that. "Perhaps," the puppeteer nodded thoughtfully, released me, and rubbed his chin. "How did I not notice before? The height is average, the figure is puny for a guy, the shape's visible for a girl, the eyes are too big and bright, the hands are thin. I just wanted to introduce you," Hokage chuckled. "Now you won't see Naruto anymore. Let me introduce you to Uzumaki Naruko." "We were just talking about the fact that it's time for Gaara to think about his future wife." Temari smiled gently, throwing a mischievous look at us. "What?" Kankuro and I exclaimed in unison. "And what?" "The elders do not favor the new Kazekage too much, and if a new ruler appears in Suna in a couple of years, then it will be in our favor. Especially if the people accept it." "Don't you want to ask me?" I snorted indignantly. "Don't you want to ask her?" The puppeteer agreed. "Gaara's a bore," he whimpered. "My brother will get it in just a week. And if she says the word lemon in front of him, he will faint from embarrassment." Kankuro, the red-haired man, growled, and a wave of sand began to flow threateningly in front of the puppeteer's eyes, which at any moment tried to wrap around his neck. "Oh, guys, I think I'll leave you," Tsunade grinned. "Have a good time." End of POV. Naruko POV. Sasuke. As soon as Uzumaki flew out of my window, a glass vase flew to the place where she was standing. The sharp sound of broken glass rang through the room, irritating the ears. Transparent shards scattered on the floor. Damn village. Damn rules. Damn bond. Damn Naruko. I clenched my fists so tightly that when I unclenched them, I felt an unpleasant tingling sensation. Now my advantage is gone. Everyone knows about Naruko. Her secret in return for the eyes. Mangekyo Sharingan, given to me by Itachi. For so many years I hated my brother, and with all my soul I wanted to slowly and painfully kill him. But even here he bypassed me, dying of tuberculosis. It just sounds crazy, but now I realized what a lie I've been living all this time. He was defending the village. The village and me. But why? To give your life for the future generation? To keep the peace? As it turned out, my clan is just a bunch of bastards who only wanted power and recognition. And that's what they've achieved with it now. Rotting underground. Geniuses, the most skilled shinobi, ninjas, in whose eyes death itself. And what happened to them? They ruined themselves. They destroyed it with their own hands when they realized that they could no longer tolerate contempt from others. Itachi can hardly be called an Uchiha. He was not like everyone else. My brother was a genius, as were all the members of our clan. But he didn't need any honors. He only wanted peace. He wanted to keep what was dear to him. Your stupid little brother. Who grew up to be a selfish idiot. And his last wish before he died? Even the last time he saw sunlight, he thought only of me. About my abilities, about my skills. He gave me his eyes. Eyes with which I will become many times stronger. With whom I can protect what is dear to me, what he achieved, but sacrificing himself. But do I have the same, dear? He had. Brother, village, and even beloved. And I have nothing. I despise this village, this government. He gave his life for Konoha, and how was he repaid? Hatred, constant whispering, silly gossip, and so on. Captain Umbu, the best shinobi of the village, comes from the Uchiha clan. And in the future, the hated Nuke-nin. Therefore, I console myself with the thought that Tsunade is not like the previous rulers. She is undoubtedly a strong woman, but inside she is too soft and humane. I am ready to give my life for the sake of others. How worried she was about Naruko when she heard my news. How she ran with all her legs to the elders. She tore off her voice, smashed everything in a row, but she made sure that the Uzumaki recognized everything. And I will not forget her shining eyes when she saw the shock mixed with approval in the eyes of the Konokovites. Maybe this is the most precious thing for her? She protects the village and its inhabitants at the cost of her life. And Naruko is like a daughter to her. And Uzumaki, damn her, it was she who ruined all my plans. I curse the very day I saw her on the river. I'm constantly thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't been there. There would still be a kid named Naruto in the village. But I saw her look when she finally saw the Mangekyo Sharingan. It was as if all her hopes had been dashed. She was completely disappointed in me. And the most disgusting thing is that I didn't want it. I wanted our relationship to remain the same, relaxed. But she wouldn't have let me go if I hadn't said those words to her. Stupid, thought I didn't notice how much she was hurting. As she squeezes, her hands tremble slightly. And there's such a desperate smile on his lips that it makes me sick. Diligently portrayed impartiality, but it did not work out. As always, I was one step ahead. When she came out to the townspeople, for the first time I caught myself thinking that I wanted to return to the time when this secret was only ours. He constantly teased her, watched with pleasure how angry she was. And now, it seems, it won't happen anymore. But I need to know for sure how she feels now. What's going on in her soul? End of POV Sasuke POV Naruko. It turned out that Kankuro is a very nice guy. True, he constantly makes fun of everything that is possible and often it turns into extra hematomas from Temari and Gaara Sand. I didn't think that I would just walk around the village with a guy who knows who I really am, and he even likes it. After the Hokage left, the puppeteer disappeared somewhere, and then I didn't even recognize him. Without his usual war paint, the guy seemed completely different. Cute, lively brown-haired, with a wide smile and laughing eyes. So strange. You know, I always suspected that you weren't like that, he drawled thoughtfully, which made me smile. Do you have a nose for girls? I forced out with a laugh. Beautiful girls, he assured me with such an intelligent look, as if he had created a new technique, an impudent flatterer. I rolled my eyes, and the guy shrugged his shoulders, saying, "What is it? I'm telling the truth." We were interrupted by a girl who was rushing towards me as fast as she could. She had such a panic on her face that I froze in place. I recognized her, she was from the hospital. Naruko-san, the brunette breathed, running up to me. Sasuke-san, he's... She couldn't finish as she went into a coughing fit. I gently held her, and when she finally managed to calmly exhale, she looked up at me with a desperate look. What happened? Sasuke-san, he's in the hospital. He's dying. I couldn't believe my ears. My heart stopped, or it seemed to me. My lungs were squeezed so hard that I just couldn't breathe, and I squeezed my throat with my hand. You're not confusing anything? Sasuke Uchiha? I breathed out hoarsely and felt Kankuro hold me by the shoulders, because at any moment my legs could give way. Yes. A deadly poison got into his body. Our doctors managed to rid his body of excess toxic substance, but it damaged internal organs. Now it is not clear whether he will survive. I swayed, and remained standing on my feet only thanks to the hands of the puppeteer. Tears blurred my eyes. "It can't be, you're confusing something," I whispered, and hysteria was rushing out. "I assure you, Naruko-san. You have to hurry." The brunette pulled me by the hand and I trailed after her like a lifeless doll. "Naruko, maybe." Kankuro didn't have time to finish because I interrupted him. "It's all right. Go to the residence," I said even too loudly for myself, and immediately went after the girl. I felt that I was starting to suffocate, but I didn't attach any importance to it. The main task now was to keep my composure, but I couldn't. First there was one sob, then another, and when I saw the doors of his room, I burst into tears quietly. "You need to calm down, Naruko-san." I sniffed and opened the door to the ward. Sasuke was lying on a cot by the window. And he looked terrifying. "He's alive, Naruko-san, as long as he's alive." The girl murmured softly, "What are you talking about, you idiot?" I exclaimed, and my body shuddered again in another attack, this time a silent sob. "That's not all true. It can't be." I whispered desperately, and still not keeping my balance, I fell to my knees right in front of Sasuke's bed. "Naruko-san, get out." My voice echoed off the walls, and the girl looked down dumbfounded. She no longer tried my patience and disappeared. POV Naruko. After the slam of the door, there was an oppressive silence in the room. And even though I didn't say a word, and didn't even move, I started to choke again. I didn't understand what was happening to me, so there was nothing left for me, except to start breathing deeply. Damn, he was lying in front of me now, not moving. Like some kind of ghost. I wiped away my tears with my hand, and stretched out my other palm to him to remove the blue-black strands from my eyes. But when I almost reached my goal, I felt fingers wrap around my wrist. I froze, unable to move, and a soundless scream froze in my throat. Sasuke, as if nothing had happened, tightened his grip on my hand and stood up on his elbows. I still didn't move. It seems that the hysteria did not take long to wait. "Bastard, bastard, I hate you." I screamed as hard as I could and started hitting him. Uchiha did not expect such a reaction from me, and therefore began to reflexively dodge, trying to avoid blows from my hands. As luck would have it, my breath caught, and I began to clear my throat. Sasuke took advantage of the situation and pressed me to him, but I started pounding him again. "Let me go, you freak." I growled, and my shoulders began to shake. "Don't come near me anymore, do you hear? I don't want to see you ever again." It seems that the brunette was not impressed by my speech at all, so he only pressed me closer to him. I tried to twist away, but I went limp in his arms and sobbed, "I wish you were dead. What have I done to you? What's wrong with you?" I began to hiss, clutching his shirt in my hands. Tears crept up unnoticed, and now I saw transparent drops falling on the milky skin of Sasuke's hands. I started to shudder in silent crying, but in the end, I began to cry at the top of my voice. Without hesitation, I howled as if I was being cut. I've never cried like that. I silently experienced everything that fate had prepared for me. Sometimes tears flowed from my eyes by themselves. I restrained myself. I was a guy. And now I'm broken. He was the last straw. "I hate you so much. I hate you for coming into my life," I whispered convulsively, and then I started crying again. Sasuke was silent for some reason, just pressed me so tightly that I could feel his breath on the top of my head. He tangled his fingers in my hair and quite weightlessly touched his lips to my forehead. Most likely, it was an accidental touch when I jerked from another attack. "Sometimes I want to strangle you. To never see in my life. Do you cause me so much pain, and then hope for a positive attitude towards yourself?" I was growling now. Uchiha again didn't say a word. I was about to make sure if it was him, until I heard a heavy sigh and my hair moved from his breath. "Calm down, honey, nothing happened," he said it quietly, but very distinctly to my hearing. I suddenly stopped crying and bit my lip almost to the point of bleeding. "What did you call me?" I squeezed out this phrase. "What are you talking about, Naruko?" he said uncomprehendingly, pulling away from me a little. Sasuke looked at me like he noticed something was wrong. I felt uneasy, and I suddenly realized that now I was sitting in front of him like a little crybaby, and he was calming me down. Uchiha seemed to notice the change in my mood, and the corner of his lip twitched slightly into a semblance of a smile. I shook my head, deciding that I was completely out of my mind, and coldly pulled away from him. "He's testing my nervous system for strength, but it's too much." "You know, I rarely say this to anyone, Sasuke," I said softly. "But you're the real thing." It seems that Uchiha expected a slightly different recognition. He opened his eyes in surprise, and I saw his chewing gum coming in. He was holding back the rising rage, I could feel it. "Don't forget, Uzumaki," he breathed, calming down a little, but his body was still tense. I didn't take my eyes off him, and those onyx eyes were ready to turn me into ashes. "I have never met such lousy people like you." "Although, no, I have. But they're dead," I spat out the last sentence. Sasuke wanted to rush to me, but something stopped him. "How quickly his mood changes. You play with people's feelings as you want. Everyone says that you are an early matured boy, the last remaining descendant of a great clan. And I see a pathetic spoiled boy, a selfish, soulless, and skillful player." Little Sasuke, offended by fate itself. This was the last straw for Uchiha. So he can just insult me like that, and I have to restrain myself when everything is bubbling inside. Sasuke grabbed me by the throat and pressed me against the wall. "It doesn't hurt, just to remind me who I am. You constantly remind me that we are different. That we have known different pain. I agree with that. But despite all the pain that people caused me, I remained open." "And you?" I grinned when I felt the fingers on my throat tighten a little more. "People were attracted to you, but you pushed them away and still push them away. You're rotting, Uchiha. Slowly, but surely. Like all your ancestors." Then something manic flashed in Sasuke's eyes, and he squeezed his hand with such force that I could barely breathe. "Do you bloom and smell?" he drawled mockingly. The very innocence. A sweet, joyful girl who has been exasperated. Endured the pain from my side for so long and finally decided to express everything? He hissed. "Only you love me for some reason. Such a vicious, dirty, and lousy thing, right?" Sasuke removed his hand from my neck and found my palm by touch. What I didn't expect was that he would intertwine our fingers. Uchiha tightened his grip on my hand and raised it so that it was in front of my face, and this, he nodded at our palms, "makes you tremble, like most girls. You hate me with your mind, you push me away, but you know yourself that you are attracted to me. You cling like the last thread in your worthless life. And your act, your tears, your hysteria, all this proves that you are attached to me. Tied up like a pet dog, I'm playing with your feelings, but you're well aware of it, Naruko, right?" "Yes," I answered simply and clearly. "I'm clinging to you, and you're clinging to me. You don't want to let go, even when I try to push you away. You're coddling me like I'm your favorite toy. But we're growing up, Sasuke. Soon you will get tired of playing, you will realize that you are doing outright nonsense. And now, as I said, you're just a stupid child, offended by fate." Pulling my hand out of his tenacious fingers, I headed away from this ward. My heart felt at least a little, but it was easier from the words I said. "Naruko, what happened to Sasuke?" Tsunade jumped up from her seat when I went to her office. "Nothing. He's fine, there's been a mistake," I replied in a colorless voice, not even fully realizing that I was covering for him again. Kankuro gave me a sullen look and pursed his lips. "Did he make this mistake by any chance?" The puppeteer said suspiciously. That girl from the hospital mixed up the wards. I shrugged, there was no Uchiha there. For about a minute more, several glances bored into me, apparently trying to figure out if I was lying. But I didn't stay in that office any longer and headed home. I was completely devastated. Naruko, wait, Kankuro's voice stopped me, and I reluctantly turned around. The brown-haired man caught up with me in a couple of seconds. I know he did it. But why? He raised his eyebrows. You're wrong, I gasped and smiled weakly. This mistake has taken me out of my rut. That's why I'm in such a state right now. I'm sorry that our walk was disrupted. Brother Kazekage glared at me for a few seconds, but then he sighed with relief and also smiled. Then, can we continue our walk? I grinned and nodded weakly. End of POV. Naruko's ringing laughter resounded through the central streets of Konoha. Several people turned to look at him with touching smiles. Uzumaki even stopped to calm down. And how did he not kill you for that? She turned to Kankuro with a laugh. The puppeteer only smiled charmingly and easily grabbed the blonde by the waist. I didn't want to spoil such beauty. He grinned and caught Naruko's eye for a second. The girl looked away in embarrassment, and the next second was followed by a light kiss on the cheek. You wanted to show me a place, didn't you? Kankuro's quiet voice brought Uzumaki out of his thoughts. Yes, of course, muttered and freed herself from the embrace of the brown-haired woman. Let's go. And at this time a dark-haired man, lazily lounging on the roof, was watching a couple of young people without taking his eyes off. He noticed them by pure chance, and when he saw not too friendly communication, he shuddered. Distraction in this way will not work, Naruko. POV Naruko, I have a request for you, Naruko, Tsunade informed me, sorting through the huge piles of papers lying on the table. Find Sasuke and tell him to appear in my office at the first opportunity. This request made me shudder, but this, to my great happiness, escaped the Hokage's gaze. I didn't want to see this asshole again, especially after our last conversation. Is that all? I asked, studying the landscape outside the large window. Gaara is going back to Suna today. They leave the village exactly at noon. That's if you want to see them off, the blonde shrugged. You're free. Hi, I nodded and left the office. The 3 days spent with Kankuro flew by terribly unnoticed. During all this time I have never seen Sasuke and hoped not to meet with his mug in the future for at least a few weeks until I calm down. And why do I need this selfish egoist, when there has been a nice, open and friendly puppet next to me all this time? I got to Uchiha's house in a few minutes. It was about 11 o'clock, so I had plenty of time before the sandstones left. I was just too lazy to go through the door, so I easily jumped on the windowsill of the brunette. When I saw the picture in front of me, I was stunned. A half-naked brunette was sitting on Uchiha's dresser, and Sasuke was rude to her. The girl moaned and sobbed, she breathed deeply and dug her nails into the shoulders of the brunette. Faster, she whispered, and then a deafening groan cut through the room. I backed away, and my foot slipped off the windowsill. Before I could grab onto anything, I fell straight to the ground. A wave of dull pain went down my back. I jumped to my feet and winced, but decided it was better to get out of there as soon as possible. Bastard, I growled under my breath, and when I had already gone quite a long distance from Sasuke's house, I collapsed on a wooden bench. My back hurt mercilessly, my jacket, I'm sure, was godlessly dirty, and a lump formed in my throat. I had a fierce hatred for this unknown brunette in an instant. I wanted to pull out all her hair. But I wanted to pat Sasuke even more. It was terribly insulting after everything that happened between us, to just cut off all ties like that. He could, as usual, make fun of me, but having some kind of girl, in my opinion, is too much. So, Naruko, do you also like to peek? A sarcastic voice was heard right above my ear, and I almost fell off the bench on which I was sitting safely. What, have you already managed to put on your pants? I said mockingly, although I felt tension all over my body. Imagine, yes, he grinned, and I felt the touch of hot lips on my neck. A wave of goosebumps ran over my skin, but I instantly recoiled from the brunette. Sasuke squinted slightly, giving me a cursory glance, and then smiled maliciously. "You wanted something, didn't you?" he asked in a more serious tone, but I could see perfectly well how he wanted to make fun of me. "Tsunade-sama called you," I said through gritted teeth. "Asshole," I muttered softly and, turning around, headed for Konoha's gate. But I had to stop because I felt a strange pain in my chest. No, this is not a snotty romance. I felt really bad. I exhaled sharply and squeezed my t-shirt with my hand, trying to pull it off. "Naruko," I heard Sasuke's worried voice, and then I felt his hands wrap around my shoulders. "Are you okay?" He lifted me by the chin and began to examine my face. Before my eyes, everything began to blur and dance a Viennese waltz. But when I finally focused my eyes and realized what was happening, I pushed Uchiha away from me. "Get your dirty hands off me," I hissed and staggered, but still moved away from him a couple of steps. "You're going to faint right now, you idiot," he snorted and took a step towards me. "I told you not to come any closer," I shouted and was surprised at my own emotionality. Sasuke froze and looked at me in surprise. He frowned, and I decided to leave quickly, while I had the strength to do so. Dark spots flashed before my eyes. I didn't understand what was happening to me. And what was the strangest thing was that I perfectly felt the vibrations of my chakra. "Kurama, do you understand what's going on?" I asked the Ninetail hopefully. "It looks like someone is trying to link our chakra." "Be careful." Finally I saw the gate, near which there were sandstones. Kankuro, seeing me, smiled broadly. I smiled back at him and quickened my pace. "Is something wrong, Naruko?" "You don't look well," the brown-haired man drawled, looking me over, as if she managed to fight with enemy shinobi on the way. Temari grinned. "I fell," I muttered. "I was thinking while I was running here. Really, aren't you dreaming about me?" The puppeteer chuckled. "Don't flatter yourself," I smiled, pushing him in the shoulder. "It's time for us," Kazekage reminded himself, thoughtfully looking at the sky, which was covered with clouds. "As soon as you have a mission in Sun, find me, okay?" Kankuro winked at me. "I wish I'd noticed you before." Gaara and Temari had already left, and Kankuro was still shifting from one foot to the other. "Will you even miss me?" The brown-haired man pouted resentfully. "Don't tell me you're in love with me," I smiled and did something I didn't expect from myself. I lightly kissed the guy on the lips, and then pulled away and waved to him. "It's time for you." "Yes," he nodded, smiled broadly, and then ran to catch up with his relatives. I shoved my hands in my pockets and headed for my house. I really wanted to lie down and sleep for at least a few days. I was already dreaming about my soft bed, when suddenly I felt a strange pain in my chest again. Looking up, I realized that the brunette who was with Sasuke was standing in front of me. The girl was smiling bloodthirstily. "Well, I found you," she drawled in a sugary voice, and I shuddered. "I didn't think it would be so easy." "Sasuke helped me a lot," she grinned. "You know, I couldn't even think that he was so good in bed, at his age. It's not so easy to satisfy me, but will you shut up already?" I growled. "I feel bad here, as it were." "Oh, do you really feel something for this guy?" "Anyway, I'm tired of having silly conversations with you." "Exactly. You infuriate me with your appearance alone." I exhaled sharply and grabbed my chest again. "Well, as you want." She rolled her eyes, and then she stretched out her hand to me and sharply clenched it into a fist. I felt a dull pain from my chest spreading throughout my body. Biting my lip until it bled, I fell to my knees, but I didn't make a sound. The pain was so intense that I didn't even see any hope of moving. "So it turns out you're a tough nut to crack," she drawled thoughtfully. "Well, nothing. I'll get Bija any way I can." "Doesn't it frighten you that you are in an enemy village, and you can be caught at any moment?" I croaked, squeezing my palms so that sand flowed between my fingers. My dear, look around, she smiled. You've gone almost beyond the village. There's not a soul here. I raised my head with difficulty and realized with horror that the truth had almost gone beyond. Did I really think that way? Well, it seems we can start. My body was again shackled by an attack of pain, and I moaned softly. Then everything swam before my eyes, and I fell to the ground. The sounds became muffled, and then completely subsided. Darkness has come, POV Naruko. I gradually came to my senses, and began to hear muffled voices, and the soft singing of birds. On the second attempt, I opened my eyes, and squinted at the light. I was in the hospital, as it turned out, and the voices were actually on the street. My body still hurt, so I was constantly wincing from unpleasant sensations. Looking around, I saw something on my bed that I could not have expected in any way. Our great and terrible Uchiha Sasuke was quietly snoring on my bed. The brunette looked so cute that if I didn't know his real one, I might have started drooling. But inside, the dark side of Uzumaki woke up at the right time, and I pushed Sasuke off the bed with a vengeful smile. There was a crash of a body falling to the floor, and I couldn't help laughing. But as soon as I started laughing, I doubled over from the pain in my chest and started coughing. Instant karma, the brunette haughtily informed me, who began to shake himself off. I sighed calmly when the pain subsided. Propping myself up on my elbows, I looked at Sasuke reproachfully. What happened to me? Uchiha rolled his eyes and sat down on my bed like a master. That girl was an enemy shinobi with rather strange abilities. The moment you passed out, she tried to pull out the nine-tailed chakra. Tsunade sent me on a mission, and I was just passing by that gate. Maybe you can thank me for saving you? Sasuke raised his eyebrows mockingly. Does the Hokage know that you are the kunoichi who tried to capture Konoha's Jinchuriki? I asked, ignoring his last sentence. It's not that important, Uchiha drawled lazily, and I was taken aback by this answer. What are you? I asked, feigning surprise. So you didn't think about who you fucked at all? Look, don't catch some kind of infection, I drawled with disgust. Why does it hurt you so much? Sasuke whispered right into my lips. If you don't move at least a meter away from me right now, I'll paint your face, I growled back at him. This freak didn't seem to care about my threats, because the next moment I felt his lips on mine. I immediately put my palms on his chest, trying to push him away, but after a good beating, my body had not fully recovered yet, and I felt weak. Uchiha took advantage of this and, grabbing my wrists, raised his hands above my head so that I could not escape. I was no longer pleased as before, I felt only disgust, especially from the thought that he also kissed that brunette. That's what made me bite his lower lip with all my fury. Exactly a second later, Sasuke pulled away, and I saw his blood. Let me go, I gasped, on the verge of hysteria. Come on, Naruko, don't act like a touchy-feely, he grinned, and his lips brushed along my neck. Sasuke, can't you understand? A sad smile ran across my lips. Uchiha stopped torturing my neck for a second and looked into my eyes. With every action you do, you only make it worse. Now I switched to a whisper, you increase the distance between us. And no matter what you do, it can't be changed. You're just ruining everything. I turned away from him, and the brunette still did not want to let go of my hands. If I ask you for forgiveness, will it change anything? He lightly touched his lips to my cheek, not dramatically, but still. Then, Naruko. Sasuke didn't have time to finish his sentence, because the door slammed. We simultaneously turned our heads to the source of the sound. Sakura was standing in the doorway with bags in her hands. She opened her eyes in surprise and unclenched her hands. The pink-haired woman froze, and I saw her eyes fill with tears. Sakura, I tried to break away from the steel grip, but Uchiha wouldn't let me go. The fruit began to scatter on the floor. Haruno just sobbed softly, shook her head and disappeared as unexpectedly as she appeared. Idiot, let me go, I began to squirm. You can't change anything. Let her know. Knows about what? I exclaimed, about the fact that you hit your head as a child? Uzumaki, calm down, he lowered me in an icy tone. I snorted indignantly and pursed my lips. We're not done. And I forgot that he wanted to ask me for forgiveness. Having made the cutest face, I stared at Uchiha with expectation. It seems that for the guy these apologies were something sacred, because he gathered his courage for several minutes. When I was about to say something sarcastic, he finally deigned to continue. I want to apologize to you for constantly mocking you, teasing you for any reason, in some cases insulting. He kissed me without permission, I prompted. Kissed without, stop, it doesn't count. The brunette stopped and frowned. Yes, it does, I assured him and grinned. Go on. Alright, he said through gritted teeth. For kissing you without permission, even though you didn't mind. As well as an unknown kunoichi who tried to kill me, I suggested thoughtfully. And that doesn't matter anymore, by the way, Sasuke said irritably, but noticing my eloquent look, he sighed obediently. Okay, and for that, too. Is that it now? That's it, I shook my head affirmatively and smiled contentedly. In fact, I liked seeing him so submissive. Especially the difficulty and expression with which he pronounced it all. Then maybe you'll thank me for saving you after all? The brunette flashed his eyes and smiled slyly. Thank you, friend, I taunted him on the shoulder mockingly. Now make sure I don't see you for the next few days. Your apology didn't solve all the problems. I think I'm starting to understand where Shikamaru got the misogynist habits from, Sasuke muttered and headed for the door. POV Sasuke. I leaned wearily against the nearest brick wall. The task of Tsunade has exhausted me so much that I don't even have the strength to stand on my feet. Somehow getting to the Hokage, I informed her about the successfully completed task and went to the hospital with a calm soul. It is necessary to return to the previous position in front of Naruko. Finding a familiar ward, I went in there without knocking and let out a laugh. Uzumaki was pulling on a lace bra, and when she saw me, her face was so distorted that I was even scared. What are you doing here, pervert? She muttered, pulling on her jacket and jumping back onto the bed. So I decided to come in and find out how my beloved Naruko is recovering. And they called me a pervert, I sighed theatrically, putting my hand to my forehead, and then wearily collapsed into a chair, recalling the case when Naruko brazenly pushed me off the bed. The blonde pursed her lips, and then pointedly turned away to the window, without even saying a word to me. It stung me. What, you won't even take into account the fact that I immediately rode to you after the mission? I breathed out, lazily looking around the white walls of the ward. If you're tired, then get lost, Uzumaki snorted. Well, why so rude? I tried to make my voice more serious. Naruko didn't answer, and was about to cross her arms over her chest, but I deftly grabbed her wrist and squeezed a little. The girl turned a puzzled and slightly sullen look of blue eyes on me. Are you just going to ignore me? I said softly, bringing her palm to my lips. I noticed perfectly well how a wave of trembling passed through her body, and her breathing was lost. What are you trying to achieve? She was uncomfortable in such a situation, so she tried to look away. So that everything will be as it was before, I breathed out and only lightly touched my lips to her palm. The blonde shuddered, but did not remove her hand. So that I was a guy, and you were my best friend and part-time rival? She let out a chuckle. No, not like that, I grinned. When I left the village, the incident in the Akatsuki's lair, the incident in the forest, I began to list all the memorable moments. Naruko looked at me with a shocked look, and then shook her head, as if trying to drive away some thoughts. You destroyed everything yourself, and now you want to return it? She frowned. But I hasten to remind you, Sasuke, that you were only interested in my body. I don't see us together, she smirked. And if I do, it's only ruins. I can't imagine anything either, but they say that opposites attract. Nonsense, she cut me off. These are all silly tales. All these metaphors are just idiocy, which occurred as a result of stupid romantic adventures of some physicists. Don't be so categorical. It's not like you. We were interrupted by a crash outside the door, and then a silly giggle. At the same time, we tensed up and stared in the direction of the sound source, expecting some kind of trick. Do you think he's there? I'm telling you exactly, but Uzumaki is lying in this ward. Yes, well, there can be nothing between them. Shoo, someone hissed, and then they spoke more quietly. I think so too. After all, it's Uchiha and Uzumaki. They are on two different islands. Oh, please shut up and stop philosophizing. Well, let's go? Exactly a few seconds later, the wooden door, which had already had several cracks, now crunched pitifully and almost flew off its hinges when a crowd of decorated girls fell into the ward. No more than 17 years old, in the most revealing outfits, civilians. Naruko-san, one of them drawled sweetly, not noticing that I was holding the blonde's hand. And we came to check on you. Oh, is Sasuke-san here too? The second one was feigning surprise. I turned my gaze to Naruko, who was thinking about something and didn't even seem to notice a bunch of my fans. Girls, Naruko needs rest, so I will ask you to leave, I said with emphasis and heard several disappointed sighs. And you, Sasuke-san? We need to discuss some details. I rolled my eyes. We're going to need silence. Once again, I will ask you to leave. The girls looked at each other for a while, and then crept dejectedly to the door. When the latter turned the handle, I saw that several parts had fallen off from it. God, why are they all so noisy? Go away, Naruko suddenly said, and I stared at her with incomprehension. You, go away, Sasuke, I beg you, she breathed and covered her eyes with her hand. Did you hear what they were saying? What the hell difference does it make what those stupid chickens said? I burst out, jumping up from my chair. Naruko took a deep breath and looked at me with such pain in her eyes that anger faded into the background. Just go away, if that's what you want. I shrugged and jumped out of the window so I wouldn't see her anymore. POV Naruko, I watched the raindrops trickle down the glass. It's like I've been replaced lately. Hell, I don't want to see anyone except one harmful person. I thought it would be easier if we moved away from each other. That's just it turned out to be complete nonsense. At the very thought of him, everything inside shrinks. I want to feel his touch again, feel his kisses. But more than that, I don't want to experience that pain again. And I know for sure that he will hurt me more than once. He's an Uchiha. And I'm Uzumaki. We are opposites who are not destined to be together. Damn, I hissed and buried my forehead in the cold glass. How shitty. I took a deep breath, but my eyes still filled with tears. I was disgusted with myself. Became a rag. A stupid vanilla girl, and that makes me feel so lousy. I sobbed and saw my tears begin to drip onto the windowsill. Clenching my palm into a fist, I felt a viscous liquid and saw blood. Why do I feel almost no physical pain, Naruko? I turned around, hearing the door of my room slam. In front of me stood a perverted hermit himself. When I was passionate about the showdown with Uchiha, he ran away from the hospital to Mount Miyaboku, explaining that he would heal faster there than here. And I haven't seen him for quite a while. What are you doing here? I tried to wipe my tears as unobtrusively as possible, but nothing escaped Sanon's gaze. What are you crying about? The man said sullenly. Don't answer a question with a question, I snorted. It doesn't make sense to answer stupid questions. I could only come here for one reason. Such a Jiraiya always scared me. He was serious, unsmiling, there was severity in his voice. Check on me? I said mockingly. I'll repeat the question. What are you crying about? I sat down on my bed and folded my arms across my chest, showing with all my appearance that I did not intend to answer his questions. But it seems that even this did not break his mood at all. Jiraiya sat down on a chair and smiled sadly, examining me from head to toe with a picky look. So it's because of Uchiha, Sannin pronounced the verdict. I opened my eyes in surprise, stunned by such a comment in my direction. Am I so loose that my feelings are visible to everyone around me? What makes you think that? I muttered, turning away from the man. Jiraiya squinted slightly, and then laughed so sharply that I almost fell off the bed and barely managed to hold on. The hermit did not stop laughing, looking at me mockingly. From such a look, I felt uneasy. I had a feeling he knew more than I did. Did you really fall in love? He wiped away his tears and tried to catch his breath, but sometimes the giggles still burst out of his chest. And I'm wondering why our Sasuke walks even more sullen than usual. Yes, all the villagers shy away from him because of the black aura. I didn't say anything, just pursed my lips, looking at the cheerful sensei from under my brows. Come on, Naruko, he patted me on the head, which caused my displeasure. Just have a heart-to-heart talk with him, not little ones anymore. I was ready to growl with indignation, but I barely restrained myself. We talked, and that's what it led to. I rolled my eyes. Well, what were you talking about? The man raised his eyebrows. It's strange, but I didn't want to hide anything from Sensei. He's not going to run around the village screaming about our personal relationship. I don't want to repeat my past mistakes, I said, pulling my legs to me. Like an idiot, I almost trusted him, and in return I got nothing but a shitty attitude. And when I decided to stop everything, he finally realized what he had lost and decided to return everything. But I know for sure that nothing will work out between us. We are absolute opposites. But opposites attract, don't they? Sensei said thoughtfully. He said the same thing. But I don't believe in all this. Maybe you'll give him a chance after all? Jiraiya smiled lightly. You're both suffering. So really, it's not worth trying again. Anyone can envy your tenacity. I took a deep breath and glanced at my watch. It was almost 10 in the evening and it was dark outside while I was talking to Jiraiya. Maybe the perverted hermit is right and I should try again? I folded the seals and a second later, with a familiar pop, another Naruko appeared next to me. Sit here, nothing more is required of you, I informed my clone, and the girl nodded obediently. Good luck, I heard Sensei's phrase when I was already jumping out of my window. The lights were already on in the houses, but there was no one on the streets, because the downpour had intensified. Now large drops were rattling on the roofs of houses, which confused me. I also had to be careful, jumping from roof to roof, so as not to slip, because I did not fully recover from the last incident, and chakra violations were felt very strongly. My hair and clothes had been soaked for a long time, but I had no time to pay attention to it. When I finally got to Uchiha's house, I suddenly doubted whether it was worth starting all over again. But after a minute of reflection, I confidently knocked on the door of the Sharingan bearer. No one answered for me for about a few minutes, but I stubbornly pounded on the door, knowing for sure that, in the end, it would drive him out of himself and he would open the door at least to send the uninvited guest to hell. I didn't even notice how my fist landed on something soft. Lifting my head, I met the surprised gaze of onyx eyes. Naruko? Sasuke examined me and gently pulled me inside, apparently because I was shaking. Hell, I don't even know why my body was shaking. If it's cold, then, Sasuke, answer me one question, how do you feel about me? POV Sasuke, answer me one question, how do you feel about me? Naruko looked at me with such determination that I was even confused for a moment. I couldn't put into words the very range of feelings I felt for Uzumaki. And she was waiting for an answer from me in order to finally solve everything and put the dots on the I. Abruptly pulling the blonde to me, I bit into her lips with such greed that she was taken aback at first. Naruko didn't answer me for just a few seconds, and then she wrapped her arms around my neck and snuggled even closer to me, letting me feel her body tremble at that moment. I grabbed her buttocks and pressed her against the wall too hard, as I realized later, because she painfully shushed, pulling away from me for just a second. Our eyes met for a moment, and then I covered her lips with mine again. Running my hands along her body, I felt all her curves with pleasure. You intoxicate me, I whispered in her ear and touched her earlobe with my tongue, which caused her to bite her lip and exhale sharply. Isn't it clear? Then I kissed along her neck, leaving a few red marks on her delicate skin. "You're mine now, is that clear to you?" I whispered again, because I just couldn't raise my voice. "Make no mistake, Uchiha, I'm not a thing," she still had enough strength to snort. But I quickly wiped the grin from her lips when I squeezed her hips and roughly sat her down on the bedside table. Only after that I was smart enough to brush off all the accessories from the wooden surface. There was the sound of broken glass and the rustling of papers in the room, but we didn't even pay attention to it, because we were busy with each other. "If I see you with this puppeteer again, I'll turn him into a puppet myself," I growled, tearing the damp jacket off the shocked girl. "How did you?" She didn't have time to finish, because I shut her up with another rough kiss. Uzumaki ran her palms along my back, digging her nails into my skin until it hurt, even through my t-shirt. She wanted me to feel the pain, but it only inflamed my desire to possess her even more. She pulled away from me for a second, and then I noticed her insidious grin, and the next second I heard the crack of fabric. Hell, she managed to rip my t-shirt just like that. I didn't even wonder at her strength. "You can handle things more humanely," I said skeptically, pulling off her mesh t-shirt, thereby showing her an example. "It's more interesting this way," she smiled broadly and licked her lips. I lowered my eyes down and gazed hungrily at her breasts. The lace bodice was definitely in the way, so after a short time with the clasp, I threw it aside. The blonde wanted to bring her hands together, but I deftly intercepted her wrists and lifted her over her head. Approaching her face, I just ran the tip of my tongue along the contour of her lips. "You're amazing." I was almost down to her breasts with kisses when there was a knock on the door. We simultaneously raised our heads in the direction of the sound source. "If we are silent, they will think that you are not there," the girl whispered fervently, and from the contact of her bare breasts and mine, it became a little tighter in her pants. "There's a light on in the next room," I breathed out resignedly and sealed another kiss on her lips. "Get dressed, Naruko." Mentally burying my t-shirt, I went to open the door with an extremely dissatisfied look. When I saw Kakashi-sensei's face, I wanted to hit his head against the nearest pole, to the point of horror, which the man apparently guessed from my look. "That's why the copy ninja arched an eyebrow in surprise. Did I interrupt you in some way, Sasuke?" Sensei chuckled. "Actually, yes," I said through my teeth, barely restraining myself from uttering a tirade to Hatake on the topic. "Just now I almost uzumaki, and, thank God, you can't see my boner in the dark." "Well, then you'll have to distract yourself, things are waiting." Here can an adult man reading erotic books explain to me how you can distract yourself from a hot sexy blonde? But outwardly, I just once again tried to turn Kakashi into a handful of ashes. As always, it's unfortunate, but I'm not discouraged. "What's the deal?" I was leaning on the door jamb, and I heard some kind of rumble behind me, and I was already praying to God that Naruko didn't think of coming out here. Hatake cast a fleeting glance behind my back and smiled slightly through the mask. "I hope I didn't notice Uzumaki. The mission is personally from Tsunade-sama. Get dressed and be at the residence in 10 minutes, the shinobi informed me and disappeared into a cloud of smoke. I returned to the house and immediately came across the girl's thoughtful gaze. "I have to get back to the hospital," was all she said before disappearing as suddenly as Kakashi. I grinned to myself and went to look for a normal t-shirt. "Your task is to deliver this scroll to the land of the wind. Kazekage already knows about your appearance, so there will be no problems with crossing the border," Tsunade said sullenly, holding out a scroll in her hand, which Sasuke took the next second. Hokage looked at the two shinobi with a picky look and pursed her lips. There was no need to doubt them even in the light of previous events, which the blonde did not even mean. Of course, she noticed that there was something between Naruko and Sasuke, but she didn't think that it could touch anyone else. "Understand that this task is very secret. You are on a rank A mission and don't have to fight anyone. To remain inconspicuous, that's what I demand from you." "Yes, Hokage-sama," the shinobi said at the same time. "Sasuke, Sakura, I hope for you. Go right now, hi." The guys nodded and hurried away from the woman's eyes. They were already outside the village gates, but no one dared to start a conversation. To be more precise, Uchiha was not going to do this, but Haruno mentally struggled with herself to ask the brunette all the questions she was interested in. Of course, she wasn't sure that he would answer them, but at least it would make her feel better. After she saw them with Naruko in the hospital, something broke in the girl. She constantly reproached herself for her weakness. Weakness for Sasuke and inability to keep his feelings under control. Crying right in front of them was a bad idea. The pink-haired girl threw a fleeting glance at the Uchiha, once again amazed at his beauty. No matter what people said, she was sure and knew for sure that inside he was not cruel at all. This is just a shell with which he tries to isolate himself from the whole world. But why is he also trying to shut her out? I'm ready for anything for him, Sasuke, the girl said softly and stumbled upon the indifferent look of the brunette. Why her? Haruno herself was surprised that she could still ask him this question. Uchiha gave her a mocking look, and then grinned to himself, and why me, Sakura? This question on his part put the girl at a dead end. She couldn't answer it. Yes, Sasuke was smart, handsome, strong. She could list his wealth endlessly. But there were many other guys in the village who were endowed with the same qualities. So why was she attracted to this, according to others, callous and insensitive, selfish egoist? You see, you can't answer that question. But I can't answer it either, and it doesn't scare you that she's been pretending to be a guy for so many years? The girl raised her eyebrows, folding her arms on her chest. Sakura sincerely did not understand how even this fact could not stop him. After all, for so many years they considered him an ordinary boy, but in fact, not at all, the brunette replied in an indifferent tone. Sakura abruptly blocked the guy's path, stopping right in front of his nose. But why didn't you pay any attention to me? Haruno said bitterly, desperately looking into the brunette's eyes. What am I so bad about, Sakura? Calm down, Sasuke made an attempt to pacify the girl's ardor. But the pink-haired one wasn't going to do that. No, you tell me, she chuckled. Damn, but we thought for so many years that it was a guy. You hated each other, competed, what has changed now? Kunoichi exclaimed louder than expected, but the brunette only raised his eyebrows in surprise. While she was trying to get around you and become a better person, I was ready to give all of myself. I'm willing to do anything for you, Sasuke, so why is she? The girl grabbed his hand and squeezed, but her eyes still filled with tears. You just can't be together. You're like two opposites, you know? Uchiha pulled his hand away with a rude movement and was about to go on, but Haruno again blocked his way. The Sharingan bearer's face already showed obvious irritation. What do you mean by that? Sasuke said through his teeth. That I'm a guy and she's a girl? That I'm a brunette and she's a blonde? That I'm evil and she's kind? So what is it? So listen to me, Sakura, the guy breathed out, again assuming an indifferent expression. Our relationship does not concern you. There are still a lot of guys in Konoha who can make you happy. But it's not me, you finally understand. Haruno rose up on her toes in 1 second and touched Sasuke's lips, quite weightlessly. The guy froze, waiting for what she would do next. He was very amused by the whole situation, and especially the way the girl was trying to win him over to her side. Sakura tried to deepen the kiss, but Uchiha only pulled away from her and went on, showing with all his appearance that he was not interested. Sakura swallowed, and then touched her fingertips to her lips, remembering the taste of a fleeting kiss. Although she had not awakened any feelings in him, the girl knew that now he was well aware of her experiences. POV Sasuke, as expected, we completed the mission successfully. Of course, everything was spoiled by Sakura's stupid mania for throwing upset glances at me, sighing heavily and looking into the distance with such an expression on her face as if she had decided to commit suicide. I didn't pay attention to all this, or to put it more correctly, I pretended. But the pink-haired one, as luck would have it, accidentally touched my hand with her own, constantly dropped shurikens or kunai, and then picked them up from the ground, arching like the most talented gymnast. If only there was something else to look at. She was not distinguished by the most enviable forms, like, for example, the eldest heiress of the Hyuga clan, or even her eternal rival Ino. Sakura had an ordinary physique, small breasts, and not at all rounded ass, so at least bend over, even if not, the result will be the same. I was already approaching my house when I saw Naruko leaning on the jamb at the door. The blonde was about to leave, but when she noticed me, she opened her eyes in shock, and then looked at my bedroom window. Uzumaki pursed her lips with the letter O, and then let out a laugh. As I approached, she started laughing harder and harder. But she didn't make a sound at the same time, which surprised me very much. She just bent over in silent laughter. I was about to ask what made her laugh so much in my window, but she put her hand over my mouth and motioned me to be silent. It was impossible not to notice how a fire lit up in her eyes. "Open it," the girl mouthed, and I obeyed. As soon as I closed the door, she bit into my lips with such force that I was stunned. Naruko grabbed my t-shirt with her hands and dragged me towards the bedroom. Along the way, we bumped into something that sounded like bollards and flowers several times. I didn't understand what caused such a rush until we fell into the bedroom. Uzumaki kicked the door, and it slammed right behind us with a characteristic bang. She pulled off my t-shirt, and this time over my head, thank God, without tearing it. "I want you," she whispered hotly right into my lips, but abruptly turned around and opened her eyes wide. Then I realized what justified her behavior. Sakura was lying right on my bed with a transparent negligee among the scattered pillows. Apparently she folded them all on purpose. Then I was really surprised by Haruno's behavior. To prove that she is better than Naruko by sneaking into my room is an idea worth the Miss Genius award. The pink-haired woman turned crimson like a tomato and hurried to start dressing. "What the fuck is this?" Naruko hissed indignantly, glaring at both her and me. That's when I really got lost in space. Uzumaki looked at me as if she had already mentally dismembered me 10 times. "And what do I have to do with it?" I let out a dissatisfied snort, obligingly opening the door for Haruno, who, by the way, did not say a word. We stood still for about a minute until we heard the front door slam. Then Naruko grinned and leaned against the wall. Was she hoping for something? The girl said seriously, folding her arms on her chest. "Most likely," I shrugged. "Otherwise I wouldn't have come here." Naruko turned her thoughtful gaze out the window and bit her lip. Did you give her a reason?" She raised her eyebrows without even looking in my direction. "She gave herself a reason." I let out a laugh and pulled the blonde to me, and was about to kiss her, but she abruptly turned her head to the side, and I touched her cheek with my lips. Uzumaki removed my hands from her waist and took a step back. "I assumed you'd say no," she clenched her jaw. "But you just dodged the question." Damn, she's not going to throw me a tantrum out of the blue, is she? It's not like her at all. But when I looked at her again, I realized that I was mistaken. She, however, was waiting for a negative answer from me, and who was pulling my tongue? "Naruko, I told you that Sakura doesn't interest me, so why these stupid tantrums out of the blue?" I hissed. "Don't act like a stupid girl." She froze when I said my last sentence, and then bitterly smiled and shook her head. "Don't you understand? I only want complete trust and mutual understanding." She clenched her fists. "I gave you another chance, which you just didn't deserve." She took a deep breath and then looked into my eyes. "Did you give her a reason?" She clearly repeated her question to me. "She kissed me," I said indifferently. "The usual contact of the lips, no more." I told her the truth, but the question is whether she wanted to hear it. Uzumaki, it seemed to me, even gritted her teeth in annoyance. "But you could have dodged, right?" She said in a strangled voice. "Yes." I didn't want to lie to her. It would have led to more disastrous consequences, so it's better to tell her the whole truth now and not worry. So why didn't you do it? She whispered. I wanted to see what she would do. The usual curiosity. Curiosity? Naruko exhaled in amazement. God, who am I messing with? Don't say that. Don't put yourself above me, Naruko. This could end badly, I warned the girl. If you say something stupid now, you'll regret it later. Whatever happens, I'm only interested in you. The girl suddenly hit the wall with such force that a dent appeared there. Interested? She said through her teeth, barely holding back tears. I perfectly saw how her eyes shone, but hatred overcame. Damn you, Uchiha. Do you feel interested? She screamed, wincing as if she felt a lot of pain. I've ruined everything. Again. Damn. I can't believe everything went wrong again. Couldn't I just say no then? Of course, Sasuke, you wanted to be frank. You're just a master. Then I asked you how you felt about me, she said more calmly, but I noticed how her fists were clenched, and you replied that I intoxicated you. That I'm yours, she blinked, and tears still traced shiny paths down her cheeks. But not a word about feelings. Not a word. Sasuke, what did you want to hear? I pursed my lips and smiled bitterly. That I'm madly in love with you? She didn't change her expression, but I already understood everything perfectly, so yes. But I don't love you, Naruko. I just don't know what it is. I sincerely hoped that my words would make at least some impression on her. But understand, what I feel for you, I don't feel for anyone else. She put her palm to her chest and gradually clenched it into a fist. And I love you. Like an idiot, she whispered. That's why I gave you a chance. I feel bad without you, terribly bad, she bit her lip. But it's even worse with you. I was hoping it would be different. Turns out, no. Staggering, she calmly walked out of my bedroom, and then out of the house. I glanced out the window, watching her silhouette disappear into the shadows of the spreading trees. And inside everything shrank from her words. Loves. Really loves, POV Naruko, and since that day, a lot of water has flowed away. Oddly enough, I lived. It sounds a little scary, but yes. She breathed, moved, sometimes talked, performed missions. But inside, it seems, she died. I've never felt like this in my life. And to put it correctly, I didn't feel anything. Dry nods to friends, an indifferent voice in front of acquaintances, perfectly executed missions. I have never noticed such composure in myself. And nothing else pleased me. I stopped smiling. She stopped laughing and radiating the old goodness. Ceased to be Uzumaki Naruko. Flighty, cheerful, kind, sweet, sociable. It is very difficult to remember these moments. They started disappearing from my memory. But he's not. On the contrary, every minute his image left an even sharper imprint on my soul. And it would seem much stronger, right? So days, weeks, and then months passed. Summer is over. The good moments finally faded into the background. September painfully slowly flew past me, October came. And I never saw him again. Not once since that evening. They don't want to tell me anything, and okay, I don't pretend to be worried. But I can hear them whispering behind my back. This stupid regret in their eyes, it doesn't bother me as much as before. In order not to feel empty inside, I train. Days and nights. I rarely come home to sleep, or to take a couple of clean sheets with me. I started drawing. This is even more strange. I just took the stationery out of the drawer and it started. Since that moment, I have not parted with a pencil and a duty notebook. They are always with me, along with kunai and shuriken. At first I cried at night, and then I stopped. I realized that this is a stupid idea of cute girls. Therefore, she began to break her fists into blood, as befits a real shinobi. She stopped being a rag. But, whatever happens, the memories of him cause shivers all over the body. My hands are shaking, my breath is coming out. His name is taboo to me. I no longer pronounce it, even in my thoughts I try to use only pronouns. She looked at the calendar and grinned. October 10th, I said with a kind of disgust. 16 already. It's my birthday. I decided to go to bed to wake up, and it's already the 11th in the yard. But, they didn't let me do it. The doorbell rings. I had no desire to accept congratulations. Listening to their instructions to be healthy, happy, loved, it's all stupid. It would be better if they wished not to die on the next mission, who knows what it will be. When I opened the door, I saw a box on the threshold and that was it. When I picked it up, I noticed a small note. We understand. So we won't bother you. Happy birthday, Naruko. You know that tomorrow will be better than yesterday, and what is better? A strange phrase. Yes, and the handwriting is familiar, but I can't remember. Either Nara and Akimichi became so understanding, or it was Hokage who decided not to touch me. I had just put the box on the table when the doorbell rang again. I hope that this time they will leave the box. I am grateful to them for that. Opening the door, I saw legs instead of the desired box. Looking up, I smiled bitterly. Standing, in person. Right in front of me, looking like nothing had happened. And inside, everything stirred up again. At first it shrank, and then I felt a strange weakness. Without saying a word, I took a few steps back, motioning him inside. And the movements were automatic, and I already got the idea that he was another dream that I see almost every night. But, no, everything was real. Sasuke Uchiha. He closed the door behind him and looked into my eyes. Only it wasn't his eyes. Where did the mockery go? Annoyance? Fervor? It's like he's a few years older. I looked at the ceiling, as if it would give me all the answers. And then I felt really bad. Either because the blood rushed to the brain in this position, or because of him. But tears suddenly gushed from his eyes. And I didn't feel it at first. It was only when I felt a tickling sensation on my chin that I woke up. I haven't cried for a long time. More than a month already. Happy birthday, Naruko. I heard a velvety voice right above my ear and felt soft lips touch my cheek. He pulled away and somehow smiled sadly, looking me up and down. And I couldn't say anything. There was no desire to be sarcastic, this was also left behind. You've lost a lot of weight, he said sullenly. She became pale, look at the bruises under her eyes. And I grinned again. If only he knew how much it hurts me right now. His every word echoes in my head. And I want to hug him to my horror, but I can't move. I didn't just come here, he breathed. As if in slow motion, he got down on one knee and squeezed my hand in his. In his left hand I saw a velvet box. I was already beginning to think that I was hallucinating. Will you marry me? One phrase. And inside everything turned upside down. I choked on air and staggered. What? My voice from the outside seemed too quiet, barely a whisper, but he heard everything perfectly. The brunette smiled again and squeezed my palm a little harder so that I could feel something. I want you to be my wife in the future, he replied in the same serious tone. And I looked around, assuming it was a dream. I even bit my lip until it bled to dispel a stupid dream, but nothing came of it. I've been trying to get you out of my head all this time. I left the village, decided that if I didn't see you, I'd cool off, and how? I said in the same whisper, only after a second realizing the stupidity of my question. Nothing. I'm standing in front of you right now, and making you an offer, how does it feel? My heart is pounding like crazy, he grinned. After your words, I realized that I can't leave everything as it is. And I decided that if I had to act, then decisively. Don't worry, we won't run to the wedding tomorrow. I just want to know that you're not going anywhere else from me. I'm not property, I said dully. How bitter it is to feel everything. He is in front of me, real, made of flesh and blood. He holds my hand and wants to link our lives forever. And I just can't not feel anything. And I love you, he said almost in a whisper, which threw me into utter shock. Get up, I said even too sharply, and Uchiha straightened up. What if I say no? He shrugged. I've been thinking about it for a long time, but I haven't found anything better than using genjutsu on you. Then, of course, I dismissed this thought, decided to wait it out, and then try again. And anyway, I didn't listen to him any further. An unintentional yes came out of my lips, said in my thoughts, but so skillfully and at the right moment burst out. Sasuke froze, not saying a word. Are you in an adequate condition now? He said doubtfully. I looked up at him without changing my expression. Do you understand what you're doing? He lifted my hand, still looking doubtfully into my eyes. Fine, I kept watching him as he put a ring on my ring finger. When it was done, I looked at my palm, and then at Sasuke. Is there anything else you want to tell me? I raised my eyebrows slightly. I want to, he smiled weakly, cupping my face in his hands. During all this time, I realized that I want to see only you every morning, I want to feel only you every night, feel only you every evening in the twilight. He whispered these words, burrowing into my hair. A wave of goosebumps went down my spine. From the words, or from his hot breath, which I missed so much. And you think you can live with me for a lifetime? Without lying, cheating, causing pain? Can you? I looked into his eyes, and my own breath caught and the tears began to choke again. He touched my lips weakly. I give you my word. I'll never make you cry again. If only from happiness. His breath burned my lips, and I enjoyed every second. He kissed me more demanding, and I couldn't even believe what I was feeling again. His lips. His warmth. Don't you want to say anything? He pulled me closer to him. I would like to call you a moral freak, but now is not the moment, it seems, I sighed in frustration, to which Uchiha only laughed softly. And damn it, I'm ready to hear that laugh for the rest of my days, and why am I only finding out about this now? Jiraiya's face stretched out in surprise to such an extent that I was even amazed at the elasticity of his skin, and how in this situation his eyes still did not pop out of their sockets. The perverted hermit did not spare a second to slap me a savory slap on the back of the head, which made me yell loudly and grab my head. For what? I exclaimed indignantly. All Konoha knows that you and Uchiha are engaged, but I'm not. Sannin defiantly folded his arms on his chest and turned away from me. I snorted and put my wedding ring palm right in front of his nose, because it appeared when you were running around somewhere. By the way, I was collecting material for a new novel. Jiraiya dreamily rolled his eyes, and I growled with indignation. Naked women are not material, I said through gritted teeth. Some other stuff, he broke off in mid-sentence and blushed slightly. That is, not naked women. What makes you think I'm looking at naked women at all? Because you've been doing this all your adult life. Pervert. I turned around and walked towards my house, and Jiraiya remained sitting near the residence with a stunned expression on his face. The sun has almost set below the horizon, so twilight has gathered over Konoha. The starry sky was not visible, and I could assume that rain was waiting for me in the morning. I don't like rain. As soon as I slammed the front door behind me, I smelled some kind of baking in the hallway. Quietly sneaking into the kitchen, I leaned on the jamb and almost splashed on the floor with emotion. I wanted so much to laugh out loud, but I allowed myself only a restrained laugh, which attracted attention. Sasuke, who had been tinkering with the stove up to that moment, turned to me with an expression "Allah, I was caught," which made me giggle. It was terribly unusual to see him like this, but soon the usual sullen mask returned to him. Do I look that funny? He grumbled, taking cakes out of the oven. Don't worry about it. I will take this secret to my grave with me, I said with feigned surprise. I hope so. Uchiha rolled his eyes. By the way, I wanted to surprise you. I just smiled broadly and grabbed the cake right out of the pan. They looked very tasty, so I didn't hesitate to stuff one into my mouth. Sasuke looked at me attentively while I chewed this mass. I thought about it, still afraid to swallow what was behind my cheeks. This is. Absolutely. The brunette measured me with a suspicious look, and then he tried his own works. After a few seconds, he immediately spat everything into the trash can. I followed his example and then poured myself some water. Couldn't you have said right away that it was inedible? He said skeptically. Well, I didn't mean to upset you. I drawled. Don't worry, I wouldn't cry, he grinned and pulled me to him. But now we know for sure that cooking is not my thing. I'm not a cook myself, so don't say the word ramen under any circumstances, he warned. You read my mind, I laughed and kissed him. Sasuke sat me down on the countertop and deepened the kiss. His fingers deftly unbuttoned my jacket, and I pulled off his t-shirt. He had already showered kisses on my neck, which made me exhale sweetly. Her skin burned where he'd touched her. The kitchen was already pitch dark. The only light source was a lone flashlight on the street, the light of which barely filtered through the curtains. I dug my nails into his shoulders when he once again roughly kissed me and lifted me by the hips. This situation reminded me of something. I hope Kakashi-sensei won't knock on our door this time. And why the hell am I thinking about Hatake right now when I'm being carried straight to the bedroom? Maybe you'll be a little more careful. I finally gave out when they threw me on the bed with such force that I jumped on it several times. Sasuke hovered over me from above and approached, so that the blue-black strands touched my face. He lightly touched his lips to mine, and then grinned. Doesn't that turn you on? He traced a trail of light kisses from my lips to my neck and the cleavage between my breasts. He did all this without taking his attentive and slightly cunning eyes off me. Only when the clasp of my bodice clicked, I closed my eyes and felt my cheeks burn. Uchiha left a few kisses on my chest, and then I felt him running his tongue over it, deliberately touching the most sensitive place, which made me involuntarily exhale and arch. Then I heard a short laugh and could no longer restrain a moan when he wrapped his lips around my nipple and squeezed the other breast somewhat tightly in his hand, so that I could perfectly feel the pain mixed with pleasure. Sasuke, I breathed out once again and ran my fingers through his hair, fingering the silk strands. He was at the level of my face again and kissed me so that I almost choked. It was as if he wanted to prove my belonging to him with all his being. His tongue slipped into my mouth, tracing the outline of his teeth, lightly tracing the palate. After that, I didn't even notice how he slipped his palm to my pants and deftly unbuttoned them, still not looking up from the kiss. After taking them off me, Uchiha for some reason grinned again, and then in one movement picked up my panties and pulled them down to the ankles without much effort. It's not fair, I first raised myself on my elbows, and then knelt down altogether, so that we were opposite each other. I, looking Sasuke straight in the eyes, unbuttoned his pants and slowly began to pull them off, deliberately touching the groin area with my palm. He somehow narrowed his eyes unkindly, and I, feeling the tension in his boxers, finally dissolved. Pressing my whole body against him, I shifted a little, so that even through the fabric he could perfectly feel all the curves of my body. Naruko, what are you doing? He whispered in my ear, pulling me to him. Can't you feel what I'm doing? I just had to grin and finally take off this disturbing piece of clothing from him. He pushed me onto the bed, so that I fell on the soft pillows. This time the flight was painless, and even pleasant. Sasuke gave me a short kiss on the lips, and then I felt his palm between my legs and let out the first loud moan when he touched my clitoris with his fingers. A tight knot has already formed in the lower abdomen. I felt so sweet and so pleased with the movements of his fingers that I wasn't even going to restrain myself, even though I tried to behave quieter at first. When I finally reached the climax, and a sweet shiver ran through my body, he, without ceremony, abruptly entered me, mixing the previous pleasure with acute pain. I grabbed his shoulders and closed my eyes, trying to understand my inner feelings. As such, I didn't feel much pain. This was justified by the fact that I was a kunoichi, so after a minute I invitingly shook my hips so that he would continue. Sasuke made several thrusts, carefully watching my reaction, but I only smiled weakly and pulled him to me for a kiss. With each of his movements, I felt a lump of pleasure growing inside. It was a slightly different feeling than the last orgasm. Each of his thrusts made me cry out and arch. I ran my hands over his torso, back, tracing the contour of the muscles with my palms. I bit my lips until it bled from the unearthly pleasure he brought me. I didn't even notice that he started whispering in my ear. I just felt like everything had reached an extreme point and ended. I trembled from the sudden orgasm that covered me with my head. My fingertips were numb, so I tried to move them. I woke up only when I felt a light kiss on the cheek. Turning my head, I met a satisfied onyx gaze and smiled gently. "I love you," a quiet whisper escaped from my lips. "And I love you," he answered just as softly and pulled me to him. POV Sasuke scraps of Uchiha Sasuke's personal diary. It's been a long time since I've been as surprised as I am today. But with Naruko, you can expect anything. Damn, I don't want to admit it, but my beloved has already caused several gray hairs on my head. Something I got distracted. Let's get back to the news. As a matter of fact, Naruko Uchiha is expecting a baby. From Sasuke Uchiha, respectively. That's all I had enough for. The blonde rolled her eyes, and then muttered some obscenities to herself in my direction, which I did not hear, or did not want to hear. I hope you have now understood the meaning of my phrase. She squinted at me, but I could still see how her hands were shaking. Naruko wanted me to take this news calmly, which I did. But my wife was terribly nervous, and pregnant women can't be nervous, right? It seems that yes. I grinned and pulled the stunned kunoichi to me. Smile, Naruko. The boy will be the first, I said with confidence in my voice. What makes you think that? She chuckled, putting her hand on her stomach, as if saying with this gesture something like, "This is mine, it's up to me. Because I said so." So what's for dinner? I wonder what the phrase "pregnant very obnoxious creatures" was about. So far, nothing has changed in the behavior of my wife's pregnant wife. Although why actually change? It's only been a month and a half. My back is numb, Naruko moaned, trying to straighten up. Sasuke, make me some tea, please. From the sight of pleading blue eyes, I could not restrain myself and with a doomed look headed for the kitchen. Do you like your favorite, Jasmine? I shouted in the direction of the living room. Yes. In a few minutes, having coped with the preparation of tea, I headed back with a mug of fragrant jasmine drink. Naruko, stretched out on the sofa, was thinking about something. Only when I went into the living room, she sat up and took the mug from me. After taking a few sips, she jumped up as if scalded and ran into the bath, apparently spitting out all the tea. Honey, what kind of filth have you prepared for me? She grimaced. Yes, it looks like jasmine. The red box is on the bottom shelf. I shrugged. Then maybe it's better with chamomile? In another 15 minutes. No, let's go with jasmine, the blonde drawled with disgust. Choosing a name for a child is a very difficult task, and it needs to be approached with special seriousness. At least that's what Naruko herself says. I don't mind at all that she chose the name for the baby herself. That's what I thought at first. Well, what's wrong with Haru? My wife growled, and it seemed to me that a black aura formed around her. It's a woman's name, a woman's name. I stubbornly argued, insisting on my own. And Yuri, what did you like so much? It's stupid, I won't let my son be called that. Naruko snorted. Well, that's fine, they won't call him anything. Good choice, the blonde said sarcastically. Jealousy is a strange thing, it just seems to exist, but it seems to exist and you come to an end. Naruko has never been jealous, but as Tsunade explained to me, her hormones are playing tricks, so you need to treat everything calmly. It's because I've gained 6 kilograms, right? Naruko walked around the house back and forth, holding her not quite big, but already visible belly with her hands. I knew it would end this way. Honey, you're talking crazy, I sighed. I don't need anyone but you, and think for yourself, why do I need some stupid girls when I have an amazing wife and a baby is coming soon, and I'm too fat, right? She didn't seem to have heard my previous sentence. Slapping my forehead, I pulled on the sweetest smile. No, of course not. You're perfect for me, yes? Well, okay then, but I'm hungry. Remember, dear friends, never, do you hear, never argue with a pregnant woman. This is at least unreasonable. And I don't care if you're right, you'll end up being guilty. I know from personal experience. What did you just say again? Naruko almost purred, but for some reason I shivered when I looked into her eyes. Forget it, dear, I waved it off and tried to make up for everything with a sweet smile. I said, repeat it, she said in an icy tone, and there was no longer an intimidating grin on her face. Now it was replaced by a withering look. My love, your turn has almost come. I tried to translate the topic, but in return I received a very tangible blow in the gut. Even in the 8th month of pregnancy, Naruko did not lose her knack. He flies with a huge belly, as if he doesn't exist at all. I'm amazed at her. We haven't finished yet. She shot me a look and went into the doctor's office, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Several other pregnant women looked at me, but their bellies were much smaller than Naruko's. I saw with what regret they were examining me, so I can say with a clear conscience that I am finished. These 9 months have passed very quickly. Well, that's what Naruko says. But I have a different opinion. I want her to give birth to triplets right away, just not to endure it all again. But, unfortunately, only one baby is expected. It's a pity, I was hoping so much. Sasuke, I heard my wife's voice from the bedroom. Come here, quickly. The tone has become a little higher. Wait a second, honey, I said, trying to get a fork out from under the table. I might have waited, but the kid has a different opinion. I jumped up like a scalded man, hitting my head on the table, and rushed into the bedroom as fast as I could. Naruko was sitting on a chair and breathing deeply with her eyes closed. I thought you were giving birth, I breathed out with relief when I saw that everything was fine with my wife, and I'm kind of giving birth. The blonde exclaimed irritably. Call Iryanov, why are you standing there like a pillar? My water broke a few minutes ago. Childbirth. 1 word. 4 letters. And what is the meaning? I don't mean biology now. What a difference for parents. The birth of the long-awaited heir. Honey, are you sure you're going to be okay? I asked, squeezing the blonde's hand. Breathe, Sasuke, breathe, she grinned. Everyone is giving birth, and I will somehow cope. Are you sure? Uchiha, what are you talking about at all? She exclaimed indignantly, which caused the nurse to be perplexed. What do you mean, am I sure? Or do you want to help me somehow? Well. I hesitated. Be patient and kiss me, she smiled, and the next moment I kissed her gently. I will remember this sleepless night forever. It was then, on the 19th of March, that my first son was born. My eyes were already closing, but I held on with all my might, although I was ready to collapse right on the couch in the hallway and fall asleep. For several hours in a row, such screams and such a choice made have been heard outside the door of the ward that I get scared. Because they mostly curse me. The door opened and a tired nurse appeared next to me. A woman in her mid-30s smiled gently at me and nodded towards the ward. Shall we go, Daddy? I followed the brunette with trembling hands. Naruko was lying on the bed. She was very pale and drooping, but despite this, she was smiling, holding a small bundle in her hands. I went up to my wife, who looked up at me with eyes full of tears. I think I gave birth to your son. She wanted to laugh, but instead she just sobbed. I looked at the little baby that was in her arms. Such a defenseless creature. My son. My first son. Welcome, I chuckled softly, looking at the child. Itachi Uchiha, my wife continued for me, and I turned a surprised look at her. I love you so much, she whispered, and I love you. I smiled and gently touched the lips of my beloved. That's the end of the guys.